Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
We had our spring game, and it was highly televised. It was played on repeat over and over and over again. All of a sudden, the portal, I had guys getting hit up in the portal to leave, and it wasn't based on what they'd done in the fall. And so I said to myself, like, what's the point of giving away information? I learned a long time ago. Really, I learned from Al Golding when I was an assistant for him at Temple. We're information gatherers. We're not giving away information, and so to put a game on TV while it's fun, while it's something that as a player at Penn State I loved, I'm giving away a lot of information that's proprietary and new coordinators. Why I just don't know why I would do it. And on the flip side, we're paying these guys now, and so it's a violent game. We have to practice and we have to be physical, but there's something additional about a spring game. And so we've gone back and forth on it. So we'll do something to celebrate the team. We'll do something to celebrate, the university, something to bring people together, but it will not be what it has been.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Live, here presented by Centris Federal Credit Union here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. What is up, DB?
What is going on, man? What is going on?
How we doing this morning? Trying to stay warm a little bit,
Yeah, it was wild. I pulled the old cabinets open kind of thing.
Yeah.
And let the little drip
The
go.
drip. Yeah, I got to get the drip.
I let my mom put that in my head.
Mine too.
She texted yesterday and she's checking on us. She's like, "Hey, hope everybody's at home." And I was like, "Well, it's really just me and Zoe."
Yeah.
Jay was at school and Breeze was there. That counts, as you heard them fighting over what to do for breakfast. She's so mistreated. Really.
It's tough out there.
Yeah, old rider.
She wanted sausage and hash browns.
Yeah, he was playing dumb. So I just, and it was weird because Biggie, my older dog, got up. Man, this dude is kind of up at like 220, 225. Mm-hmm. He's walking around, and usually it's cold in there a little bit, but there's a warming blanket. Cold in there a little bit, a lot of it. And
you still sleeping with the window open?
Yeah, it's cracked. It's not open.
Come on, man.
So he's kind of doing his thing. He usually goes back to bed, but he didn't. He came up by me and he sat by my shoulder on the pillow, which he never does.
Yeah.
And so I grabbed my phone, I put it on him. I was like, "Oh fudge! I guess we're gonna go out." And dude went out and did his thing. Kind of walked around for a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, if I have to go get him, it's not gonna be good. So I didn't go back to bed until 3:45 maybe.
Oof.
I know. And he was only out there probably 5-6 minutes. But no, so it was 4 because my neighbor's garage was open.
Yeah.
And I know that they both leave right around the same time. And then I just chilled. So I feel like I've been up and at 'em for a minute.
Because
anything you want to know about the weather?
Because you have. I mean, you've been up for 3 hours now.
I went on a deep dive on salary cap issues, the NFL, the draft, who I like, who I don't like, who I think's gonna move. How bad will I laugh if Travis Hunter goes 1? That's about it.
What? Who do you think is gonna move?
I don't know. If I'm Tennessee, I get out.
But who do you find that wants that pick? Because unless somebody falls in love with one of the quarterbacks,
there's got to be somebody that wants a quarterback. Although, I mean,
if you fall in love with Bill Carter,
if you believe, there's probably a handful of guys I listen to, and then I try to come up with a consensus.
Yeah,
it's like recruiting rankings, and then you get a whatever you call it,
composite.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for. You could probably get both quarterbacks in 5, 6, 7, 8 range.
Seems like it.
So
now I don't know how much I buy that.
Now, what I do want to see is how well or how spectacular Abdul Carter is.
Yeah, like how he tests.
Yeah.
Because if he gets super freaky.
If his personal workouts and his, what he will or won't do at combines is is off the chartish.
Yeah.
I mean, you may have to make a run.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may have to make a run at the old AC.
I don't totally believe. I mean, I've seen the same things you have. At first, a couple months ago, it was 1-3 or 1-2 with the quarterbacks. They're kind of falling down the process a little bit. I don't totally buy that neither one of those guys is going 1. Just from history, we see somebody talks themselves into quarterbacks. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks kind of go earlier than they should. I think he went 11, but I remember sitting there watching Christian Ponder go, and I go, what?
No, the Ponder, Locker. There was one more bad one.
Yeah, that
Ponder, Locker.
He either went 7 or 11, and it was the 2011 draft, I think.
It was trashy.
But he was Minnesota panicked,
right?
Everybody else went ahead of them, and I watch a lot of Florida State football. I go, that guy's not a first-round quarterback.
Did he still have that big bionic brace on his elbow?
Yes, he did. Right. It looked like he was the Terminator. And then it happened again either the next year or the year after, I don't remember which, with E.J. Manuel. And I go, listen, that's a nice quarterback in college. That is not an NFL quarterback. What are we doing here? And every year they kind of talk themselves into these guys. So until day of, and I don't see one of those guys going 1, I just don't believe it.
It's funny that the NFL so far hasn't had the problem, and they might.
Because neither of these guys is Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean?
Their history says he's not my problem anymore.
He's still kind of your problem. You don't have a quarterback.
Sure. Well, apparently you guys don't have a third baseman either. Take those.
Hey, we have 2 third basemen.
Wow.
We're just going to stack them at the hot corner.
It's just funny. We were just talking about that, right?
Yeah, last week. Because I was like, wait, who's going to play where?
And we just assumed
Devers going to play DH.
He's like, yeah, no.
He's like, no, I'm the third baseman.
I'm a third baseman.
And Alex Cora's like, yeah, those people aren't here anymore. They made you those promises.
So anyway, the NFL hasn't had the problem, and I guess it's built on how the league is, right, with the cap, and it's a league that's supposed to be built on parity, right? That's why you have the first to worst all the time. It hasn't suffered from losing stars. So somehow they're managing being just okay at the top from a quarterback, or pretty good at the top from a quarterback standpoint, and just okay everywhere else. And listen, Shane, I'm not poking fun at the Raiders because, I mean, they're in purgatory. And I'm a Steelers fan. You think we're in much better shape? I mean, only because of the organization, not
a quarterback.
Not a quarterback.
Because of the rings.
That's old. That's old, man. But the league has been able to function. Like all these other, and I guess did baseball needed a boost with the whole steroid and McGuire Bonds thing? It was getting ready to hit a little low. And now in baseball, I wouldn't say it's back with a vengeance, but it's certainly back. It's star-studded.
There's a lot of really good young players.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that their mainstream popularity is there yet, but in terms of quality and youth, yeah, I would agree.
And I would say I think hockey bounced back from the early Bettman debacles and transitioning from some stars. They've got a nice crop of great young players now where the Ovies and the Crosbys can kind of
pass the torch.
And it's cool. NBA is the one that's in trouble right now, in my opinion, with their product. But
which is ironic because they also have very good, very young players.
Yeah.
But, and this is, I mean,
go ahead.
Well,
I'll tell you why I think the NBA is in trouble.
Well, seems like there's one pretty big reason the NBA is in trouble. Well, I think there's 2. Number one, they're sort of going through the same thing baseball went through a few years ago where the math has kind of broken the game a little bit. Yeah. And so we heard Zach talking about it yesterday, right? Part of the reason he likes college basketball is you can turn on a college basketball game. You're going to see 100 different styles.
Multiple styles.
Everybody in the NBA plays the exact same way. Just like 3-4 years ago, especially before they made some of the changes with the shift and the pitch clock and some things to make the game a little bit faster, more interesting. Baseball was dealing with the same thing. It was a 3-outcome sport. Still is to a certain degree, but they've tried to fix some of that, right? And I think it's been better. Basketball is layups, dunks, three-pointers, free throws. That's it. That's the whole game. And listen, I'm the guy that sits here and tells you talent-wise, skill level-wise, it's as good as the league's ever been. But product-wise, it's a hard argument to make.
Yeah, and I won't. That's okay. Let's just say I say okay.
I know you disagree with the talent a little bit, but that's
No, I wouldn't arm wrestle over that. But what I would say is the league kind of got caught from a money standpoint into these huge revenues.
Mm-hmm.
The luxury tax is at a thing where it's you have some revenue to spend. You save some money and you made some money with your television partners. But you're giving guaranteed money to a generation that doesn't seem to know or understand the magnitude of getting guaranteed money. I think it's
or what's required of them
I
for
think
that.
I think it's a little deeper than just. I'm not going to go all Draymond Green, right? Because it's not like, everybody he was playing with and against was playing hard either, right? Draymond played hard, and he does play hard, and so I'm not going to discount that. But when you have guys at the tail end of 40, like if you're not going to play in an All-Star game, just don't play.
Yeah. Doesn't
Right?
have to be this mystery.
Doesn't have to be this wait and then, not get dressed with your team and not take pictures. Like that is lack of self-awareness. It's not understanding the game.
Yeah.
Right. So people don't like that.
No.
And that's just an example of the latest of the biggest face of the league doing the league that way. So if that's how the league thinks of itself, that's how your viewership is going to treat.
Yeah, there's no reason for the fans to think any differently.
Right. So, you need some guys or a generation or a group to be like, hey, you know what? With this guaranteed money, man, I'm going to really make the most of this opportunity.
That's why I was so excited about Wembanyama acting like he cared during the All-Star stuff.
And so with the NFL and kind of how they've structured the the money with the cap, and even baseball without a cap. I was having this conversation last night with St. Louis Jordan. We were talking about actually, I think we were talking about Devers. I don't know what the segue was, but it was baseball. I'm like, there's going to be some great battles for clearly LA's won, right? But I still would make the case that they didn't bring in the most talent. They did. I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, there's a team in New York.
Go ahead.
Like I'm talking about proven talent.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to convince you that. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the Dodgers didn't.
They got better, and they were already really good.
Yeah.
And,
not going to say that. But there's still going to be like some super battles. Like, best wishes in the East, AL East.
Yeah.
Or I think the AL, the Central.
The Central could be spicy.
It's going to be competitive.
Yeah.
The battle for the next 2 or 3 spots in the NL West is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, Diamondbacks will be interesting this year.
I like the NL Central, right? I think the Cubs are vastly improved. If Arenado stays in St. Louis, and I think he will, like that team is pretty good. The Braves will be healthy. Like there'll be lots of nice little battles. Yeah, the AL West.
Yeah.
So somehow without like a hard cap, like that sport is still, I think, functioning.
They've done and it's been frustrating for me as a Red Sox fan, but they've done a pretty good job of making the luxury tax punitive enough that it acts as a soft cap.
Yeah. And it subsidizes a lot of things.
Like it is, but it's highly deterrent for teams that are going to go over multiple years in a row, right? You might have a team kind of go all in for a couple of years, but they're going to back off after that.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how the thing has been set up. But I get really frustrated because I'm a big NBA fan and I love basketball, right? And so I'm sitting here and I'm watching, I watch, random games on night in, night out basis. And it's one of the only times I think in league history where you could just pick a random game and there's probably going to be something interesting to watch for you. Like I can go and watch I mean, the Spurs are an obvious example, right? They're not that good, but Wembanyama's phenomenal to watch, right?
Yeah,
Or
I think as a fan, you're a little more immersed than I think you give.
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a casual NBA fan
Sure.
that's going to turn on. Let's just take Detroit, and let me give you another. Let me give you Detroit,
Orlando.
No, Houston.
Houston. Oh, Houston's fun to watch.
Okay, but hang on. So my point is,
Yeah.
teams that haven't been good for
Mhm.
a while, they're on the cusp or potentially of being pretty good. Like quietly, Detroit's got a nice roster.
Yeah.
Right.
Cunningham's really fun to watch.
We know Houston does, but it's not like they know Sengun.
Right.
Right. So I think,
But what I'm
sure, while that's interesting to a fan,
right.
you're not just flipping. You're not going to see that on TBS and say, "Oh, I wonder."
But what I mean is,
It's
if
not like
like
you're going to see Olajuwon and
no,
Isaiah Thomas yet.
but what I'm saying is, if you're a basketball fan and you just pick a random game, just say like, I'm just going to watch an NBA game tonight. There's a decent chance there's something good for you to watch in terms of if any random game. I think there's something that could be entertaining for you. Or
I even think college basketball has that problem. I don't know. I don't know.
Which problem?
I think college basketball is in kind of a similar spot. I didn't agree entirely with Zach on the premise of the quality, but I do agree with him in terms of the style,
Like variety of styles. Yeah, and I do think that matters. But
right, Tennessee doesn't look, or Vanderbilt doesn't look like Purdue or Wisconsin in their style of play. So, I mean, I understand that.
And I do think for a lot of fans, that's interesting, right? It's like I said, it's part of the reason people like college football. But then you've got like Kevin Durant coming out here and saying things like, I think it's more fun to complain about the NBA than it is actually watch it. Crazy, cancel All-Star Weekend, and let's give everybody a break since we're so miserable around this time. He tweeted that out yesterday.
Yeah.
And I go, listen, man, this is like, don't go out there and not give a single crap whatsoever and then be mad that people don't want to watch.
Does it happen in other sports where people are so outwardly clap back about their sport?
As like NBA players do?
Yes, like current players.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see it. I don't think. But I don't know if I'm more like, you really don't see it in baseball for sure. I feel like they don't say anything. And I don't really think
not guys that
NFL.
are currently playing.
No,
like you may. I mean, Antonio Brown and some of these guys will get loose.
Yeah,
but not guys that are currently playing.
No, because most people don't have an issue with the product for the most part in the NFL. Like most people can agree, hey, the NFL is pretty good, and you might have be like, oh, the officiating is this and whatever on sort of one-off scenarios.
Even though you've penciled in teams that you think are going to be in the Super Bowl, like for the last 3 years, because it doesn't seem like.
Yeah, but you still go like. Kansas City still has to go through Buffalo and Baltimore, and now you've got people like the Chargers on the come up, and you've still got Joe Burrow who didn't even make the playoffs this year. Like there's really good teams that you have to get along the way. Yeah. People assume that Mahomes is going to make it with Kansas City, but they also assumed he was going to beat Philadelphia, right? And he got his head beat in. Like that's the NFL puts out a pretty good product, even if you end up with some similar results.
And there's a reason it's king.
Yeah, and so. You don't get a lot of that with the NFL, but I don't you can't be here and watch the NBA All-Star festivities, which I think I'm one of like 4 people that actually did. 2 of them are on this stage right now, and sit there and go, "Oh yeah, that's a really good product."
Although I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably as big a sports fan as across the board.
Absolutely,
and it took me. I think I realized Thursday or Wednesday that it was All-Star Weekend.
Oh, I totally forgot about it.
And do you know how I realized?
How?
That because I was looking for games, and there were none on the schedule.
And so you're
I was like, oh, shoot, it must be All-Star Weekend. There's a break.
Yeah. It was late last week that I realized it.
So, I mean.
And I really like the NBA, right? And so you can't go out there, act like you don't care at all, which is what the All-Star game is, right? Nobody outside of Victor Wembanyama looked like they cared even a little bit about what was going on there, whether it was in the skills competitions, whether it's in the little tournament they did. I would venture to guess a lot of people don't even know that they changed the format of the NBA All-Star game.
Do you think it's helping? And they're everywhere now, and I guess with the partnership that they've got back with ESPN, it has helped hockey.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel like, when you hear from Kachuk or Eichel or some of these guys, and hockey's kind of flown under the radar of like the four major sports
Until this weekend,
that hearing guys rep the sport like does anything for the promotion?
I think it does, but I also think it's because it reflects what you see. You see the Canada and
'Cause
U.S.
I heard this about Trout for years, and I'm like, well, what difference will it make?
Yeah, I don't know for Trout if it does. I don't.
My point is like the best players being spokespeople, because that's kind of what you're getting at.
Sure, but it's not just about being spokespeople. It's about the product reflecting what the spokespeople say. Okay. Like Kevin Durant could come out there and be like, "Hey, we've got a great product. We've just got to get people to get interested."
And if he's blowing smoke, we're gonna be like,
yeah, but if they're out there playing like they did on Sunday, nobody's gonna care. The reason that it matters when the hockey players say, like when Kachuk's out there talking about how much this means to them and how much it matters, it's because they got in 3 fights in the first 10 seconds. You can tell that it matters, right? He wouldn't have to say anything. The words just are accessories.
You know what I think it is?
To what we saw.
You know what I think it is?
What's that?
And we see this in NFL fan bases. We see this in college football fan bases. It matters to the people that are consuming the product.
Sure.
Because hockey jumped off like that because of the people that were consuming the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was super important to them.
Sure.
I mean, Americans, they were pretty pissed, right?
Mm-hmm.
About the intros and didn't like getting booed. But it mattered to Canada.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're going to have things like that are high intensity and you get after it, I think a lot of it is set by the people that are consuming the product. I really, really do. Just think of how rabid college football fan base is.
Sure.
I think that's a good part of why.
So you think NBA fans are too casual in
general? I just don't know if they're passionate enough. I don't know if they're passionate enough about their own product. Because, listen, you're a staunch NBA guy, right? Mm-hmm. And if I really wanted to say, you could want to talk about something 5 days in a row. Mm-hmm. And I could convince you that nobody wants to hear that we have to say.
Sure.
And you wouldn't fight for it.
No, probably not.
See, that's what I'm saying.
But part of it's a market thing too.
So like if we were in Denver or Cleveland or
like Omaha's not a huge NBA market.
I understand.
You know.
But you need kind of. Because 15 years ago, mm-hmm. it wasn't an NBA market either, and the conversation would be different.
Sure.
So, yes, I mean, I'll concede a little bit of that, right? Because I do think,
but I get your point,
right? Because we could talk about things that are NBA related, and we'll get feedback,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, people care, or people say, nobody cares about boxing. We'll talk about boxing. We'll get some feedback. So you just never really know,
sure. Or we'll talk about this. We'll talk about a couple weeks ago when we were doing trade deadline. A lot of people were interested in the trade deadline stuff, but then you come to actual games and you come to actual stuff, and it's less interesting to people.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the NBA does have a problem.
They need more on the court stories,
and I do think it was put in stark contrast to how great the NHL exhibitions have been with the Four Nations.
Yeah,
and that to me is probably the worst thing that could have happened to NBA All-Star Weekend is that it happened on the same weekend as the NHL was doing something super cool.
I'll hold that thought. Lance asked a good question about a rules change.
More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
I think the biggest thing is that we went from playing, this is with all love, we went from playing in the Big Ten West to playing a much harder schedule.
Yeah.
So we went from 5-7 to 6-6, but we were a much better football team. You know, close losses, which have kind of hampered Nebraska for a while. Close losses usually mean, hey, we're just not as good as we want to be yet. You know, people act like it's like the secret sauce, but we went from playing good teams to adding in a USC, to adding in, you know, even UCLA, who got hot for a little stretch there. I mean, we played some really tough teams. Indiana, who you know, obviously Coach Signetti came in and with the new modern rules, the transfer portal, like he revived them, he re-energized them. So I feel like we made a step. Is it where we want to be? No. But to your point, at the end of the year, I did stand up and say, hey, listen now, we're not going to apologize for being the first team to go to a bowl game in 9 years, and actually then going on and winning it, having the first winning record in a long time. We're not going to apologize for, I mean, we beat Wisconsin, and we won the statue, the trophy, and it's in our office, and it says, for 12 straight years, it says Wisconsin. There's not one time it says Nebraska. And so, you know, we're not going to apologize for what we did, but we also recognize that we've got to be in the, we didn't come to Nebraska to not be in the playoff conversation.
Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Make sure you're being careful out there. I know the streets seem a little better, but got on 680 this morning. There was a huge multi-car crash over on Pacific Street or by Pacific Street right off of 680. Make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're being careful. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Keep those eyes peeled. Keep that head on a swivel. DB, we're having this conversation about kind of the differences between the sports and the way they're perceived by their fans, the way they're perceived by their players. And I do think there's some overlap here with what Coach Rule was talking about with the spring game, right? Because we had this conversation, a week ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, about a week ago.
Yeah, where I'm talking about, they kind of do owe it. Like when your fans do care that much,
yeah.
I do think there's an obligation to deliver something to them,
right? I heard you.
And I was like, it better look at least a little bit like football. Yesterday, we hear Coach Rule say, it's going to be a celebration of the team. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a lot like football. Now, I don't think they've decided either on what exactly that's going to be.
I agree with you. I think it's pretty fluid.
But that's how I took it. When I hear celebration instead of either exhibition or something like that, or even a demonstration, it makes me feel, I don't know that, and I don't think I'm alone here. I'm going to say we. I don't think we're going to get what we want out of that spring celebration.
Well, I think he added a little more teeth to it on the why.
Sure.
Which
I get.
I fact it was kind of interesting because he said the part, and I think I said this to you off air. Sometimes when this, or like earlier in my media career, this would happen to me. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to, it's just one of the things personally that I've tried to work on. Sometimes when I know something mm-hmm. and no one else does, or not no one, but very few other people do, and I say something to the contrary of the general, I know I can run the risk of sounding like
contrarian,
just out there, or
for the sake of it.
For the sake of it,
yeah.
Right. So sometimes with more information, it's not always good,
especially if something changes and it doesn't come to pass.
Unless you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I will say this with regards to what he said at the presser about guys being picked off and kind of tampered with. Mm-hmm. What did I say I said, I wonder if the quiet part does have something to do with injuries. And I said, I understand, because you gave me some pushback, and rightfully so. Mm-hmm. Right? You gave me some pushback on, well, what's the difference between the 15th and the 12th? Or, it's
and genuinely wondering, because I don't know. Okay. Like, I haven't been through that, so I don't know.
I just was giving hypotheticals because it was a good question, and I didn't really know what I wanted my answer to be, but I'm just thinking, okay, well, how would this be different for me? Mm-hmm. And I would say, sometimes there are guys that will play out of character mm-hmm. in a time of desperation, or because there's more people watching.
Adrenaline kind of kicks up.
Or do something that they normally wouldn't do within the confines of another practice. The other thing that I think we have to think about is on that day of April 26th, I firmly believe nothing will change with who's going and who's staying. I think things will be made up.
Settled. Yeah, sure.
So how do you control guys leaving and coming and injury on their way out the door? Guys mad?
Yeah.
Are guys going to be like, what the heck? I'm not going to be here anyway.
Yeah.
Just human nature.
Sure.
Right? Just
real people stuff.
Real human
life.
nature.
Yeah.
And so I was, because these are the things that I think of. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, fudge, if I ain't going to be here, I don't know if I would go out of my way to burn the place down. Just depends.
Depends on how it was going.
And there's different phases in my life, too.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes
like 20 years old, probably more likely to burn it down.
Yeah, I torched the whole thing.
Right? Like that's just most people are at 20.
But
it also depends on how you're leaving, right?
And if guys are settled, mm-hmm. do you want them commingling?
Sure. Guys settled with guys that are not going to be around.
But I do know the more questions you ask about is this necessary or why would we do it, the less apt you are to actually do it.
Yeah.
right?
It's really
just simple risk analysis.
I mean,
now sometimes we don't want to hear it. We don't.
Sure.
And I understood your perspective. But I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm willing to be patient to see what they do and what kind of sense it makes.
Sure.
Because I hear it. Listen, guys, I hear it. You guys will tell me, and I'm not saying you're crazy. I've got a handful of friends, probably at least associates, probably 15 to 20, that will tell me, you're making, not me personally, but we're making too much of the 105. It's not, how about this dude's running hook shot? Good. It wasn't sick 'em last night for Baylor. It was suck 'em. That the 105, we're making too much of it. The numbers work. You know, it's 2-3 deep across the board. I got people breaking down 4 stations. You can still do this. Now, there are some misnomers, but I'm not getting in the weeds with those folks because generally speaking,
they're not crazy.
I think they're closer to being right than not.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not, but if we were to go through a practice plan, it thins out in a hurry.
Sure.
Now, some people that are used to working with smaller numbers
will do okay with that.
Yeah. And sometimes bigger numbers
can be a detriment too.
100%.
Not everybody gets as much focus as they need to.
2 out of the last 3 coaches had to really study and think about how to practice with more players. Mike Riley, Coach Rule. Both had you know what he's walking into at Temple and Baylor.
At Baylor, there were like 3 guys left on the team. Yeah.
Then you go to the NFL. He's never needed numbers.
No.
So I think quietly that's going to be an advantage. That's neither here nor there. But I do think the style in which how they want to be aggressive and what they want to do, because he loves the way that they practice, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like somebody asked me in Nebraska City, one of my guys from Auburn, he comes down, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, and he asked some tough questions. And one day he was like, hey, I was talking to, one of the high school coaches, highly credentialed. I mean, obviously it's Auburn, right? I mean, there's a guy down there that wins a lot of state titles. And I knew he didn't say him by name, but I figured it was him as the coach. Asked, how hard do they practice? Just tell me they practice hard, and I'm going to be okay, because that's 80% of it.
Sure.
And he asked me, he's like, can you honestly say I'm watching practice that they get after it physically and lay it on the line? And without hesitation, I'm like, yeah, I think they do. Right? I've watched live special teams. I always talk about the Bullets and the Gunners and how I was a little taken aback at, they get after it, right? Now, I don't know how apt you will still be to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. I do.
So
I get
working smarter will obviously be part of it, and that's what I think we should be talking about, not just the sheer numbers of it.
For sure. And I want to get into that a little bit more here in the next segment, because I agree with pretty much everything you're saying, and there's still a but.
Yeah.
Right? That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla.
Probably need to get into our report, too. At least it was floated around about our running backs coach.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
I think one of the biggest things is that because there is no contract, because they're just player promise contracts that the player can leave at any point, what you're going to see is I might assign a value to a player of, hey, I think a starting right guard is worth X amount of dollars. That in the NFL, that's kind of consistent. But in college, another team might say, you know what, we can't get these guys, so we're going to pay 3 times that value for your player. And so really your value comes down to what you're willing to pay for somebody. It's completely different. So all the salary cap managing type people, you'll need to do all that. But at the end of the day, at the core part of the day, it's going to be about each coach having to make a decision every year about which players am I willing to keep, which players am I willing to walk away from, and am I thinking of this in a 1-year increment? Am I thinking of it in 3-year increments? It's if they ever did go to contracts, it would be completely different. And then if everything gets leveled, it still comes down to recruiting. It still comes down to the player saying, hey, what's the best fit for me? What's the best opportunity for me? You know, the days of teams loading up and having a great second team, because that's usually the difference, right? The best programs have the most depth. But now teams are going to buy away their depth. Hey, why be a second string guy there and make $200,000? Come be a starter for us. Maybe it's not as good a program. Maybe it's not as good a league, but come be a starter for us and make $500,000. And not many kids, some kids will, but not many kids are going to turn down, you know, that much of an opportunity change. And so it's really going to come down to who's the most creative.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Some really interesting stuff there from Coach Rule. You know, we were talking about the spring game in kind of the last segment, and you brought up a lot of really good points. And Coach Rule brought up a lot of really good points. And I agree with all of them. I agree with you don't want people tampering with your players, and you don't want to put out, you know, he said we're in the information business. You don't want to give it away for free. I totally get that. He mentioned that, you know, sometimes you go a little harder in the spring game than you would in practices, and that can lead to injuries and things like that, as you were talking about. You brought up a really good point with the roster management about, hey, if you know what's settled and where guys are, do you want those guys intermingling with players that are already, they have their spots on the team? And all of that can be true. And I think all that is true. But I still think you owe the fans something.
And I think he acknowledged that.
You know, I do too. But that's the rub, right? That's the balance that you're trying to strike, because if you're Nebraska, hasn't been a lot of sunshine and rainbows for the last decade, right? And a lot of times we go like, oh, it's been 25 years. It's really been 10. It's really been about 10 years of not great football. Before that, it was better. There were some good years under Pelini. Like, it's not, you get a 7-0 start under Riley. Like, I'm not saying it was great, but it's better than, like, 10 years is the problem about. And you've asked a lot of your fans over the last 10 years. And over and over and over again, they have delivered. I mean, as far as I can tell, maybe there's some lapses in funding somewhere or another, but that doesn't seem to be the case. When Nebraska asks something of its fans, they come through. If that's the case, and if fans do want the spring game, I think you owe it to them, because there hasn't been a ton of results in the fall that have gone on to, I guess, reward that support. And I get it's not a linear thing. You say, hey, I pay this amount of money, I get this amount of wins. I get it doesn't work that way. But if you're not able to get those wins in the fall, and they haven't for a while, I think you owe it to the fans to give them whatever else you can to reward them from the support. And to me, the spring game's a pretty easy thing. If you're worried about tampering, don't put it on TV. I'm okay with that. Go ahead.
Is there an opening? Okay. 2 things.
Sure.
Number one, how many people, this is just thinking out loud, how many people that attend the spring game with our game, that's one. Like, maybe we're over analyzing about what people want. I don't know. I think the bulk of the people that I talk to are indifferent about the actual game. Just give me something.
Sure, and that's why I said earlier, give them something that looks like football.
Yeah.
Something that looks like football.
I'm not gonna be mad at you for wanting to be specific about it, wanting to look like football. I'm just saying.
Here's the other thing that I think a lot of times in what we do, we get.
Now I'm gonna forget number 2.
Sorry, go ahead. Go do number 2.
I forgot number 2.
Shoot, that's my bad. That's my bad. We'll see if it comes back to you.
Okay, go.
So I think there's also a difference in a lot of the people, and you're better about this than I am sometimes, about kind of interacting with people from different perspectives of the fan base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to, and a lot of my friends have a very much different perspective than my friends in the media or whatever. I get that a lot of people in the media or that are kind of work around or tangentially around the program like we do don't always think that much of the spring game. Here, last year was going to the spring game was the first time I'd ever been credentialed for a Nebraska game.
Okay. No, go ahead.
And so, like, but you hear it, and people are like, oh, I'm not going to that. Like, media members and whatever, and they go, I'm not going to that, or that's not a good use of my time, or I'm not even going to watch it on TV, or whatever, right? So I think there's two very disparate kind of sections of
let me start right there.
Nebraska
I'm just going to give you 8 guys. Okay. And how similar in their thought process do you think these 8 guys would be?
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Jack Mitchell.
Okay.
Caleb Henry.
Okay.
Sam McEwen.
Okay.
Brian Christopherson. Sean Callahan. Evan Bland. Amy Just.
Mm-hmm.
And Avery Howard.
I think the biggest outliers there.
Just give me a range of thought between just 8 people.
I think the biggest outliers there are going to be Jack and Avery, because I think they care more about the program like a fan. Not that they're not very good at their jobs media-wise, because especially, we work with Avery. We know how great she is. But I think they care as much about the program as fans as they do about as their job.
My point is, and I bet this would be true.
Okay.
The range in thought just between a random 8 people would be pretty wide. Imagine 55,000.
Yeah. No,
that's my point.
I get that. But I guess my point is amongst and I'll go even bigger number, right? I mean, call it there's 2 million people in the state, basically. 1.5 million of them are diehard Nebraska fans, minimum, right?
Yeah.
Out of the 1.5 million, do you have 100,000 that would want to be there on April 26th to watch a spring football game?
Like all things big, like just could snap their fingers and be there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you owe it to those 100,000 people.
Yeah, but I don't know if they need it to look like football.
I think they do.
Okay. I think if you're going to – so here's the thing. And I don't even know how I got this far into the weeds. I think here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think don't operate under the guise of it being football, i.e. don't play touch and put pads on and not do anything. If you're gonna do football, then I think you have to do football.
Sure.
But I think if you do like skills or flag or one-on-ones or something like that, I think that would suffice.
Yeah, I don't know where, to be totally honest, I don't know where the line is in terms of how much it has to look like football.
Yeah.
I don't want it to look like a fan day. I need it to be more than that.
So what if it looked like 1890?
I'm fine with that.
I mean,
I enjoyed that.
You could easily get that.
For sure, and I'm good with that. But that looked like football to me. I get it doesn't look like a game, but it looks like football.
That looked like a fairly...
That looked like practice.
It looked like a practice.
Right, but practice looks like football. To me, enough.
I wonder if they would be willing to practice. But like, he brought up, so I didn't get, okay, so this was the second point.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know what you said that triggered it. Oh, it was the look like football. He brought up an interesting point that I think we don't think about. You have 2 new coordinators.
Yeah. And you don't want to give anything away.
Mm-hmm.
I totally get that. I do.
I didn't think anything about that.
I get it.
But when he said it, it was like,
I think that matters more for John Butler.
It matters. Well, with even Hoagie, like I think the one thing we're missing with him is Holgorsen can play a lot of different ways.
But
I mean, he can run it with the cue. He can throw it around the yard. He can run it with his tailbacks.
No, I get that.
So,
but he's been doing this for long enough time. If you really want to figure out Now, you may not know exactly what he's going to do with Nebraska, but if you really want to figure out a general idea of what Holgerson's going to do, there's enough tape to figure it out, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
You might have to sift through a lot, but he's been doing this long enough that you could match. Okay, this skill set sort of matches
you know
Dylan.
what's interesting?
And
you know
this,
what's interesting about that?
What's that?
As he told you at the tail end of the season, somebody asked him in the media what he wants this offense to look like, and he said, "I'm gonna get through the bowl game first. Ask me again closer to spring ball.
Sure.
I want to see what we have." I think I'm 100% sure he's being authentic with that.
Oh, I agree, but I also think
So even he doesn't know.
No, but I also think he's going to fall back on his kind of repertoire of all he's done in his career. If it's entirely new, I'd be stunned. If it's kind of an amalgamation of things that he's done in the past, that would make sense to me based on his personnel. I would expect that. Yeah. But there's a much wider base of existing knowledge with what Holgerson might do versus what John Butler will do as a defensive coordinator.
I mean, that's fine if you're just comparing the two, but
that's why I said it matters more for Butler to be not.
No, I understand, but that's kind of like the Hoiberg playing 20 minutes thing. Like if you want to get into 17 versus 20, you can. But
sure.
If your heart could just rest on the fact that, you know what, stylistically, we don't want to put any more out there than we have to because they really are fighting for every competitive advantage. There's clearly a couple of things that have happened, whether it's players or other coaches or guys leaving, that has him bothered about information.
For sure.
He's not just because he usually could give two poops, but something seems
like something happened.
There's a burr somewhere.
We'll continue this more as we get into hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Close losses, which have kind of hampered Nebraska for a while. Close losses usually mean, hey, we're just not as good as we want to be yet. People act like it's like the secret sauce, but we went from playing good teams to adding in a USC.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Getting into the weeds here, kind of on Coach Rule's interview with Josh Pate yesterday, and some of the topics we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, whether it's spring game, roster management. But we were getting after sort of what does it need to look like to appease the fan base. Maybe appease is the wrong word, but to please the fan base that has given the program quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of gotten down to this, okay, well, how much does it need to look like football? And you asked me a question off the air, or on air first and then off air. Well, like, what if it looked like the 1890 practice in the fall? I'm totally good with that. That looks like football to me. I get it doesn't look like a football game.
I want to, okay, pause.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think people felt after watching the 1890 practice?
Anybody I talked to enjoyed it.
Are you being serious?
I am, yeah.
So the sense that I got was that was it?
Yeah, that wasn't my experience with people. Again, different.
Well, I don't know. I sat with you for a good chunk of the time.
Yeah, most of it. I think most of the practice, yeah.
So you're talking about like after? Because you and I we were kind of nerding out a
Yes.
little bit.
Yeah. Because, we're watching different position groups and skill work and one-on-ones and all sorts of stuff.
And we were one of the few media guys that were on the other end.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody was on whatever, the good players' end. But it wasn't really the good players.
No, it was more offensive.
Yeah.
Because we were watching a lot of linemen on our end, which that's where I fell in love with Keona Davis. But
well, that's where I fell in love with Mackay.
Yeah. And so I liked that a lot. And the people I talked to that were
there. Do you think, will that satiate? So I got something different from that.
Okay.
But if you feel like in your sphere that would suffice, like I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that. And I'll give you two different perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay. So JB, that's my guy in KC. He said anything to get people to come to the stadium to have a game day atmosphere for young fans that might not normally make it to the stadium. Kids might be more engaged with mini games and drills. Now that's on the heels of Lance saying, and I think they're talking about the same group.
Mm-hmm.
He said the spring game will affect young fans the most.
I agree.
So
I agree.
So I think Lance and JB, now coincidentally, they both have kids.
Sure.
And they're what I would call big fans.
I famously do not have children, but the first Nebraska game I ever went to was a spring game. I think that's very common for young people in this state. And we've heard a lot of consternation and hand-wringing about the younger generation of Nebraska fans because of the struggles. I don't think you can afford to take away something that connects to the youth.
I get it, but you know who that starts with? The parents.
I get that. But you're going to make it harder for them, for their kids to be fans?
I don't know. I don't know if that's harder.
It is, because the spring game is a super affordable thing.
It's still going to be it might be free.
No, I get that.
But I shouldn't even say that.
If
I'm not saying anything they haven't insinuated. I mean, Dannon said, hey, listen, we've made charge, we may not, we don't know what the admission is. Like, they may do you a solid.
Sure.
And I asked you, I said, would you eat the line item? Because you can make it up someplace else. Now, you typically don't want to just erase a line item.
No, but if you're giving the fans something and you're trying to be like, hey, this is a good replacement and you want to show people that for free, I get it.
Now, let me give you the counterpoint.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from Rayshawn, because this is like 100% full disclosure. He's talking how I would feel as a player. Okay. Now I'm going to give you the back end I'm going to give you the ... after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Rayshawn says some of the players and their families expect to see some semblance of a game. The spring game has been a way for some overlooked players to really shine.
Sure.
Now I get that. Okay. I'm that dude. I'm
sure.
like, watch the spring game in 95 and 96 and tell me I shouldn't be playing. That's how I feel.
Sure.
Right. Now, what I'll say to that is, and I have to say it even to myself, and not but, and some of those guys will already know their role.
Sure.
So, do you just want confirmation from the outside, or do you not care that they,
As a coaching staff?
as people watching,
Okay.
that want to receive that kind of structure?
Sure.
Do you care that they may already know their role?
No, not necessarily. Listen, I understand spring practice or the spring game not being super useful from a football standpoint.
Okay, because you really, as a
I
fan,
get
you,
that.
you want to move the program forward, right?
You do.
You have to next phase this thing. You got to go from
I get it.
5 to 7 to the next phase.
I get it. But
Can you support however that will look to the staff?
yes, but here's the thing.
You going butter, Ann?
This is a but, I think. Like not Sir Mix-a-Lot, but it is a but. Is
Hot take. It's kind of overrated.
no,
But
it's
anyway.
only okay. Like it's
anyway.
it's mostly like it's funny, but it's not,
No, Sir Mix-a-Lot is great.
Zip it. That's not even your favorite attribute, according to you.
Well, rap?
Yeah, that.
It's really more of a ballad type guy.
Okay.
No, but here's the thing. So you're right.
Can't you have a rap ballad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did
so-
you used to like Heavy D?
Yeah, Heavy D was good.
Heavy D sang a song that I like called "Don't You Know,"
Mm.
and it was more a ballad.
More ballad.
Don't you know? Hey, babe, what's happening today?
See, now that's fire right there.
Or LL Cool J, I Need Love.
Yeah, there you go.
When I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall, and in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call, telling me I need a girl that's as sweet as a dove. For the first time in my life, I see. No, not Biden.
You know
Okay.
who needs some love though? Nebraska fans.
I get it.
No, but listen. So I get what you're saying. If you're saying, hey, Coach Rule's telling me that to go to 5 to 7 to 9, we need to do this instead of what we've been doing. I get it.
Are you sure?
But then we damn well better get to 9. That's the problem.
No, you can't do that.
No, but that's the problem.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Listen, if you're a fan and you're like, hey, I've been doing this, you've been asking from me, I've been given, I've been a good partner in this relationship.
How
And
are you going to put that ultimate? They bet.
No. Listen to my heart here, right? If you're gonna tell me that, hey, we're going to do this to move the program forward, it doesn't have to be on concrete numbers, right? Then the program needs to move forward while doing that. If you're gonna take away a thing that people like, a thing that gives back to those people, because the fans give all the time to move the program forward, right? The fans give a lot to move the program forward.
Well, let's not act like they don't get their pound of flesh by vocalizing
I get it.
displeasure and things.
I get it.
They also have the right to not show up. They got more power than you act like.
No, I
they're
get
at
that.
the mercy, man.
But
There
we
ain't
don't-
no gunpoint in 2025.
No, there's not. But you don't want it to get to that point where they stop showing up either. Right? Like, you don't want to play that game. You don't want to play the shoot the hostage game.
No, but you know what game you do want to play is sometimes you may have to.
The spring game. That's the game I want to play.
Maybe you have to take a step back initially to
Sure.
iron the whole thing out.
That's fine.
Right? If I'm going to give pushback about not having the app ready,
Mhm.
right? And Bill's going to look at me and say, "DB, trust the process.
Mhm.
We may have to do this in the short term to get this in the long term, but when we roll it out, blank." And I'll be like, "Okay, I trust you."
Yeah.
Right? Because some of those meetings were kind of like they weren't. It was.
I mean, it's a big change.
Yeah,
It's a big
right?
change. No, I get it. It's a big change.
So,
But you trust the process. You trust the leadership.
well, not to get too much into this, but it is important because, I mean, people have to consume the content. But him coming here personally,
Mhm.
like, set the whole stage for me listening.
Sure.
So,
It's different than it comes in an email or a phone call or whatever, right?
yeah, and he's been consistent over the last year about the direction.
Yeah.
So, I like conviction,
Sure. I get that.
right? I like conviction.
What did we hear Coach Rule talk about yesterday? Hey, you got to double down.
So, that's what I'm in.
You got to double down.
That's my point.
I get it.
That's my point.
I understand that.
Sometimes you just.
But the mentality of a football team, a football coach, and then the fans,
But what's right may not be
does
popular
differ.
at the beginning.
that's totally fine. But in order to make it popular, at some point there has to be visible progress.
You can just see the incremental steps that they're trying to build, right? Shane, do you have played the clip that you came? I want you to listen to this. And I want you to tell me who you think he's talking to. Shane played the clip again about close losses. Right? Nebraska plays in a lot of close games. Statistically, this is not an anomaly.
Correct.
Okay? Shane, go.
Close losses, which have kind of hampered Nebraska for a while. Close losses usually mean, hey, we're just not as good as we want to be yet. People act like it's like the secret sauce, but we went from playing good teams to adding in a USC.
Who do you think he's talking to?
Sounds like he's talking to the fans.
He's not.
Talking to the players?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's talking to his staff.
Yeah.
I think he's talking to his staff too, and his players.
Players make sense because he was talking about, hey, he was talking about guys that go, hey, we did this and we only went from 5 to 6. And so I get that. I do.
Okay. That's so.
But fans need to hear that too.
And I don't think I'm not in some like connected deep. I'm just telling you, listening to this dude long enough. No disrespect saying this dude, but whatever. That's not by accident.
Oh, I get that.
He's stacking the mindset that everybody that's in this deal, if you're with us, we're going to have to do some things and say some things that we may be uncomfortable with, but you got to ride with me.
Here's the only thing I'll say about the way you're processing this is you have a tendency to process things more like a player and a coach than a fan. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I'm a quick processor.
Yes. But I do think you have a hard time taking yourself out of player coach mode.
Yeah.
And I think in player coach mode,
because I'm a fan last.
No, I know but I'm a fan first. I didn't coach football. Like that's the only frame of reference I really have for football is as a fan.
Right.
So it's hard for me.
That's why I don't discount that.
And so I think what you're saying is true. I'm not even disagreeing with you. I do think there's a section of the fan base, and it's not because we're not bought in, Kobe. I think there's a section of the fan base that's like,
wait, what?
Yeah, he goes, Ravi doesn't get it, he's not bought in. Like, okay, that's a stretch, but whatever. There's
Kobe just catching strays.
Well, I mean, like if you've listened to the show for the last year and don't think either of us are bought in, I don't know what you're listening to, but that's fine.
Isn't this your year or is next year your year?
Yeah, next year is my year for the playoff. So
okay.
I said by that time Dylan's a junior, Nebraska's being a college football playoff, which literally nobody else in the state has said. So I don't know about not being bought in, but all right.
I do like what he just said though. That's his clarifier.
That the fans are
he's saying, Ravi.
Yeah. Kobe.
They are bought in. They'll do anything that rule tells them.
I get that.
Okay.
I do.
I'm just telling you what his stance is. I'm not saying whether he's right or wrong.
No, and I understand that.
I don't have I'm listening.
And I think he's right for the most part, but I also know towards the tail end of last year, after they go 5-2, and then things got not great for a while, that the support didn't feel as supportive as it did the year before.
So fans just fanning. That's okay. I'm not going to judge that.
I'm not either. But my point is, you have to be careful if you're going to take things away from them. That's my only point. You got to be careful if you're going to take things away from them.
That's the workaround to coming back. Then you better win 9.
If you're not going to give them something that looks like football in the spring, and I get it's not linear. No, I get it's not linear.
Oh, that was coming.
I get it's not linear. But if you're going to start taking some things away, then the results in the fall need to be there.
But you're talking about a guy, and he's all into stuff like this. Shane, he loves this guy for his competitive. Now, I'm not talking about political takes. Shane, play the clip from Kurt Schilling.
The Red Sox rivalry transcends sports. Being a part of that was certainly an attraction to all of this. I don't have a problem with the expectations. You're coming here to break the curse. Well, right, fuck curse. It's a curse of talent. We were just never talented enough to win.
Right? F the curse. You just didn't have enough talent probably to win. There is no curse. This is what he's been trying to instill. In the same vein, I think, hey, we may have to do some things a little bit differently to get the desired outcomes we want.
Sure.
We've tried it the other way.
I get it. Yeah.
We've tried it the other way.
But at the same time, right? If you
Is this but or and? Because you keep saying but, and I feel like you're being dismissive.
and
You can't fake it.
and but
What a blandino.
oh, you can say douchebag now. We're not on the air anymore.
I'm not real comfortable saying the D word out loud.
Dean?
I think it a lot.
Okay.
I do. I'm like, that. I think it a lot.
That Dean Blandino. No. So here's the thing with me, right? I agree. Like, there's not a curse. I don't think Nebraska. That's the thing I got so mad about Scott Frost about was like, oh, Nebraska's snake bitten, and we've seen this movie before. It's like, no, you're the one directing the movie. You get to cast the movie. Like, this is not something that's happening to you. This is something you're doing, right? I get that. I'm on board with that. It has largely been. I don't know that I would say it's a talent issue for Nebraska in a lot of the losses. In some of them it is. I think there's a lot of games Nebraska's been as talented or talented enough to win and just hasn't. Now, listen, you raise the talent level, you improve your chances. I get that.
And I think he's going to up the ante for his staff.
Sure.
Like,
and maybe that's part of the talent too, is maybe the staff hasn't been talented enough in years past. I don't know.
I get the sense. And this is right on the heels. Look at what your guy D. Lloyd said.
I'll find it.
Just span up about 5. He says winning cures everything.
Yeah,
Ravi has a point, and it's needed. But I understand how not having a spring game takes the pressure off of coaches and players. Right? So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like if you man, not to go all biblical, but like, let's say as a super devout Christian, right? You believe in the resurrection and being saved. It's like at the end of the day, real faith is just laying your head down at night and saying, because you said so.
Sure.
Like just real faith.
Sure.
Right. So I think, but he has to change the mindset first.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the physical thing. And he's had to, and I'm going to say this, and this is speculation. Mm-hmm. This is totally my opinion. And I'll use Deloitte as an example. When you lose good players like Jalen, okay, and you have to kind of quickly reload, and I assume that they've had conversations, Coach Rule, the staff, Jalen's dad and Jalen, right? I'm just going to use this as a microcosm. So you have conversations. Hey, what's the issue? We'd like you to stay. What happened? Well, this, and this. I didn't like this. I do like this. Well, this is on your watch. Let's say, my kid had to pay the price for this, because let's not kid ourselves, right? The allowing of Coach McGuire to have as long a reign as he did impacted that wide receiver room. Sure. Right? Yeah. Regardless of what you think about his coaching prowess.
For sure.
It impacted that room from everything from a Nair, like
Nair, Banks, Lloyd, Barney,
Coleman.
Yeah.
Carter Nelson.
Yeah.
Like everybody's been impacted in some way, shape, or form to the good. So when people have those hard conversations with you, because he said it in the press conference.
Yeah.
Listen, parents, I will talk to you. You can talk to me. But you, at the end of the day, you better perform. You think parents that hear that, or players that hear that, or fans that hear that, don't think that they're going to turn right around and throw that in his face and say, well, you need to hold yourself accountable too?
Sure.
And he's going to be like, I think he's going to say, oh, okay. So if I have to, at the end of the day, if I'm the one that's going to be being read about and you're going to hold my feet to the fire, this is how I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think this is how we have to do it to get to where I need to be. Because some of those people that have criticisms or that leave the program or that go get different jobs, they're not 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So he has to be able to eat the meat and spit out the bones. Okay, well, how do I get better? Like, what do I need to change? Right? And if I want to limit the variables, then I have to control what I can control, because it's the same goddamn thing that I want to ask of my staff. Right? Like, I just get this. When I look at how hard he is on his staff right now and kind of what he's asking of them, in terms to ramp up. There will be no excuses. He's gonna literally say, "All right, fellas.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Listen, we've revamped. Like I had to eat some of these early hires. I got to start over. Some of these guys left. We're gone. That's behind us.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of the past. Let's move this thing forward." I think he's asking that of everybody. And don't let me talk you into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to give you what I think is the consistency of his message. Because he's not going to sit here and tell you that everything he did from a staff standpoint to strategic, like he's just not going to tell you he batted 1,000.
Sure.
But he is going to say, okay, like, all right, well, where'd they have a point? Well, it's hard to move on from McGuire,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to move on from Foley.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking about relationships.
Sure.
Right? It's hard to move on from a guy that he recruited from the time he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
In Knighton. It was hard for him to move on from Trev Alberts in that relationship or Ted Carter in that relationship. And he told me and I told you, well, he told Menor and me. He's like, listen, this is a transactional game. It's very difficult. You can't be so attached to things.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fluid. We have to move on and adjust.
He told us the same thing in Big Ten Media Days.
Right? Oh, yeah, he did.
You can't be so emotional.
Yeah.
You
can play with great emotion without being emotional.
Right.
Okay. I think the consistency in the message is what we're missing.
So here's my only question.
I just kind of where I'm at.
To bring it all the way back to spring game, moving the program forward, all that, right? Does Nebraska win more games? Is there a version of Nebraska winning more games or being a better program by axing the spring game?
I think I do. I do.
So whatever positive you think that is it outweighed by giving up having 70,000, 60,000, whatever the number is, it's usually 50 plus at least, Nebraska fans in April for a recruiting weekend? Because that moves the program forward too. Like, can you weigh those things and say this one is worth sacrificing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, well, here, let me tell you why.
No, yeah, I'm listening.
Because I think whatever the product is that you get on April 26th will suffice. Okay. And as long as it does, I'm fine. I think it will suffice. But I do think the overarching or the bigger picture is we've always done it. Like, don't you want them pushing? What do we love about Coach Hoiberg? Right? You just played Gavin Griffith.
Pulling different levers. He's
Yeah.
trying to figure out what works. I get that.
So doing something different and thinking about things differently on the fly is kind of what you want.
Sure.
Now, I get it. It can come across sometimes as desperation, but I certainly don't get that sense.
It's about what does it cost you on the other side? On the other side of the coin, what does it cost you? And if Coach Rule said we've analyzed the risk reward here, we think the reward's better, I can live with that. Yeah. But then I'm gonna want to see the reward at some point. Like, that's just how life works.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question. And I think, he started with his staff. Okay, he made necessary changes. Mm-hmm. You can make the case that they're better on paper than they were a year ago. And he knows that there's that certain amount of pressure on him too. Mm-hmm. He's got to be better in game.
Sure.
They've got to be better in game. They've got to be better with clock management. They have to be better with sequential football. So the more variables that you can eliminate, the more you can isolate the real problem. I think at the end of the day, you'll want that.
I totally agree with that. Kobe, I'm going to come to your question next because no. More Hurrdat Sports Live.
be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
I think you're going to need tremendous leadership by guys in the locker room to just keep staying focused and finding a way to get in the tournament. When I was in the NFL, the veteran coaches would always tell me, hey, just get in the tournament. Once we get in the tournament, who knows what can happen. I'll be interested to see next year, are they going to continue the home games? Are they going to do 2 rounds of home games? Like, to think you get a bye, but then you don't get to play at home, I mean, that makes no sense. You watch the NFL playoffs, and when we recruit kids from Texas and Georgia and Florida, and they come up and they enroll for the first week of spring, and it's 22 degrees. The best thing that always happens on that Sunday is there's an NFL playoff game, and it's usually the Chiefs or the Bills. And I say, hey, look at that, guys. We're just getting ready for the league. Well, but I want those playoff games to happen in that weather. I want the benefit of hey, you win, and the games down the stretch in the regular season matter more if you're fighting for buys, but also fighting for home games, and those home games are in the weather, and then let the rounds after that be the bowl game. So I think it's a study of everything. People are going to try to say less is more, but it's hard to get into those. It's hard to get into those games, and so if you're a place like Nebraska, we can't think about anything else other than, hey, winning this week to get us one more week closer to getting into the CFP. And so once we get there, then we have to hopefully have a team that has the leadership and the resiliency to galvanize the way Ohio State did and go on a run.
Halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Been into a pretty deep conversation, kind of spurred by Coach Rule's comments on Josh Pate yesterday. And go ahead. Look like you had something you were going to.
It just is interesting. He's so stinking consistent. I don't even know if he means to be. Well, he said get galvanized and go on a run like Ohio State did. Like, he's not wrong, but what'd he leave out?
The loss?
Talent.
Oh, well, yeah, there's that.
He didn't even talk about how good they were physically.
Sure.
Do you think that's intentional or just what he really thinks? Because he in his head and that staff, what's left over, has to think this is the same team we took into the fourth quarter.
So I was just going to say that.
That's what he thinks.
I was going to say, is it possible that he looks at, okay, we played with these guys for 3.5 quarters, longer than that, and he looked at it and he goes, they're not that much better than us.
You know what? I don't think that's what. Okay, so sure, that might be. Let's get.
Maybe he wouldn't say it that way, but
sure. Do you know what I think he thinks? The game, you need a certain baseline of good players, but the rest is the two things that I talked about.
Sure.
Which is
because he probably looks at Michigan last year and goes, they weren't more talented than Ohio State last year either.
I mean,
right?
I can't even give him credit for chess checkers, but I will, because I don't know if it's intentional, but I will give him credit for consistency. Shane, play the clip one more time.
That clip again?
Yeah.
I think you're going to need tremendous leadership by guys in the locker room.
Was one.
To just keep staying focused and finding a way to get in the tournament. When I was in the NFL,
two,
the veteran coaches would always tell me, hey, just get in the tournament. Once we get in the tournament, who knows what can happen. I'll be interested to see next year, are they going to continue the home games? Are they going to do 2 rounds of home games? Like, to think you get a bye, but then you don't get to play at home, I mean, that makes no sense. You watch the NFL playoffs. And when we recruit kids from Texas and Georgia and Florida, and they come up and they enroll for the first week of spring, and it's 22 degrees, the best thing that always happens on that Sunday is there's an NFL playoff game, and it's usually the Chiefs or the Bills. And I say, hey, look at that, guys. We're just getting you ready for the league. Well, but I want those playoff games to happen in that weather. I want the benefit of hey, you win. And the games down the stretch in the regular season matter more if you're fighting for buys, but also fighting for home games, and those home games are in the weather, and then let the rounds after that be the bowl game. So I think it's a study of everything. People are going to try to say less is more, but it's hard to get into those. It's hard to get into those games. And so if you're a place like Nebraska, we can't think about anything else other than, hey, winning this week to get us one more week closer to getting into the CFP. And so once we get there, then we have to hopefully have a team that has the leadership and the resiliency to galvanize the way Ohio State did and go on a run.
Okay. You talked about leadership, mental toughness, being galvanized, and home field. So those are all the things that I think are important to him that he thinks he can replicate that aren't talent specific.
Sure.
Then in the meantime, you try to get as many good players as you can. But I think, and he said something earlier about being smarter and trying to do things differently. He has not talked a ton about talent, regardless of what the format is.
Sure. No, I think there's a couple things there. One, I think he genuinely likes his roster. I think he likes a lot of the guys on the roster.
I think he thinks that's one of the least important things, even though it's important.
Yes. I also think he's more about things that you can directly control once you're in season, right? Because that's a lot of what he's talking about is, and this, I understand this starts in the off season and in workouts and everything like that. But I think once you have your roster, you kind of have your roster, right? You're not going and getting guys mid-season or anything like that to try and figure it out. So once you're there, those are the things that matter. Those are the things that shine through. But, I mean, the Michigan-Ohio State thing is a really good example. At any point over this 4-game losing streak, have you thought that Michigan's more talented than Ohio State?
No.
Right.
Although, no, I'll just say no.
It was closest last year, probably.
I'll just say no.
And that's not to say Michigan doesn't have really good talent, but
I mean, you don't have to convince me, though, because I told you over the last 7 years, we have very few conversations about talent.
yeah,
Well, at the end of the day,
I don't think that's been Nebraska's problem.
I give you the checkbook example, right?
Yeah.
You look at your checkbook and you see where all the money goes, and that's really what's important to you.
Yeah.
When you look at the end at these games with Nebraska, how many times do we actually talk about the other team's talent?
Not very much.
Which means it can't be very important to us.
Or we don't think it's the issue, right?
So-
and I tend to agree.
Um,
But I wanted to get back to something Kobe said here, right?
I'm
Because
trying to figure out, why do people keep bringing? So, I don't know. I go ahead. You could ask Kobe, because I want to ask Captain why. I don't know if he and Game Dog are the same person or they're different people, but why do they keep bringing up Coach Rule's win percentage? I think context matters in terms of jobs that you take
sure,
and how you do within those jobs.
I made this argument for Mike Leach not being in the College Football Hall of Fame.
I don't. So you should just stop coaching, or less merit, or I don't know. Like, is he not good? I don't get that. So maybe that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I don't. Especially within this discussion, I'm not really sure what the context is.
It's just I don't know, but okay.
But I want to get back because we're talking about spring game and the reasons not to do it and whatever. And Kobe says if tampering wasn't an issue in college football, then you'd be right. But any school can just offer a kid your roster more money and they leave, then your roster is screwed. Let me ask you this question.
Me?
Everybody. But you're the one sitting here, so sure.
All right, Tim Miles. Everybody.
Everybody. How many guys left Nebraska of consequence after the spring game last year?
Everybody.
I don't know. Probably not many.
I can't think of anybody of consequence that would have played last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was on TV. That's the example Coach Rule has used a few times. He has used it as an example of, hey, our roster was poured over and it was on TV a million times and all this stuff. I don't think anybody of consequence left last year. So I'm having a hard time having that be the reason. And if it is the reason, just don't put it on TV.
Do you know what I think a lot of it is?
What's that?
Is I think nationally and in his peer group, which is how you speak at the Broyles Award, I think people trust his evaluations.
I agree. I think he is respected within the community.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his peers think that he's good at what he does.
And I think they think he has a good sense of the direction of the game.
So the two coaches that I told you about, the two respective schools that were recruiting Caleb at the time 2 years ago, two schools that won a ton, said, well, that has our interests.
Yeah.
Like that's a good hire.
The hiring of Rule got their attention.
Yeah.
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 And these are the two head coaches. So that lets me know that it just doubles down on the respect thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I say that to say, look at all the guys. If you want to bring record into it or whatever, cool. But my counterpoint would be, look at the guys that get offered and recruited after Nebraska offers.
Mm-hmm. How many guys have we talked to Tim Verghese about?
People trust their – oh, yeah. Now, he's a good example because he sees it.
Yeah. How many guys have we talked to Tim Verghese about? Michael Terry is a great example.
So I think the whole 7-6 thing or a 5-7 team, I don't think real coaches, if that was the case, nobody would come from FCS to FBS.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's not what it is. real people that do this for a living can evaluate players and performance outside of the outcomes.
Mhm.
They just can.
And they can evaluate the job a coach is doing.
They just can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the low hanging fruit thing is not relevant. It's not the same.
I also, there's, like, again, the context matters. I mean, not 2 weeks ago, I was railing about Mike Leach not being in the College Football Hall of Fame. He's off by like 3 games, right? Because his win percentage isn't high enough. He took over maybe the 3 worst jobs in FBS football at the time that he took him over, right?
Well aware.
And so him winning at those jobs is more impressive, in my opinion, than somebody taking over a really good program. And like, Ryan Day's a really good football coach. What Mike Leach did was harder, I think.
No,
It's a different kind of hard, but it's harder. And so, like, Mike Leach didn't get born on third base. Now, Ryan Day still had to get to home. I get that, and he did. But Mike Leach had to hit the triple, and Mike Leach never got to home. He never won the national championship, right? But he had to hit the triple in the first place. That's kind of what we're talking about with Coach Rule here. Look at where Temple was when he took that job over. Nobody in the country wanted the Baylor job. Not a soul. Nobody wanted that job. The number of guys on that roster when he took that job over was not enough to field a football team. Nobody wanted that job. No players wanted to go there. And to then turn that into a 11-win team 2 years later is a miracle. Okay? And then Nebraska. Let's not pretend like Nebraska was in a good place when he took this job over. It wasn't. It maybe was in a worse place than any of us even realized at the time. It was pretty bad, and we tend to be a little myopic about it. This was a rough job to take over. And he, in 2 years, has gotten to a bowl game, which hadn't happened in 9 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, they only won 6 games. Well, that wasn't something anyone else could do here. I get we thought there was more on the table, and it's disappointing when you think, oh, I might get a job that offers me $120,000. I only got a job that offered me $90,000, but right now I'm only making $60,000. Well, the 90 is still pretty good, right? Yeah, you wanted the 120. Felt like that was on the table for a minute. You still got the 90. That's a nice improvement.
What do you okay. So, like, what do you think he means? He said this. I just try to remember, like, just put things in success in order. What do you think he meant? And we went through this when he said, you're going to have to get used to, or we need to get used to, December's being busy around here. Decembers have historically been quiet around here. They're not going to be like that anymore.
I think it was pretty loaded. I think he meant a lot of different things.
But he said that, right?
He did say that. You're going to have to get used to, I think, the chaos of December. December's being busy or noisy.
Guys wanting our players.
Yeah.
Coaches getting offers. Like,
so there's a lot of things there, right? One, I think he expects to be playing in December.
Okay,
playoff games. So that's one.
Okay.
2, guys if he's got a good roster and he's got good depth on that roster, people are going to come for it. So player movement. And then 3, we saw this year. I don't know if it was December or January. I'm losing track a little bit here. But I think it was December, the movement of coaches, right? Terrence Knighton and Tony White this year were the big ones. And, you know, I know it's not December anymore, but now there's rumors of, you know, maybe Texas sniffing around. E.J. Barthel.
Yeah.
You know, Peter Nakos, I think, from On3.
You know, and it's interesting that you bring him.
Reported that.
I said this a year ago. I'm going to say it again. I feel like this is giving me some Raiola vibes, and I'm here for it. So, like, we can talk about this. Why are we so dismissive about Barthel's coaching prowess?
It's because we don't like the running backs very much.
Who's worse than when he got him?
Nobody.
Anybody markedly better?
I think EJ's better. I think Ramir, when he was healthy, now that's not an EJ, when he was healthy, looked his best. I think when they used him right, Dowdell looked good.
So was Dowdell better than he was when we saw him last spring?
100%.
Who was his coach?
EJ Barthel.
Okay. I'm just curious how we have all these conspiracy theories on why Barthel would be in the run for a Texas job. Or do we not care about
He
development?
might just be good at his job.
Do we
and-
not care about development? Or does he need to land the star-studded guy? Because
Jamarion Parker.
Parker's pretty good. And I'm telling you, Nelson's pretty good.
Also, he's the reason that Dowdell came here, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a
it's
highly
just-
attractive portal candidate.
The way people think about him bugs me. And we could stay with it.
Mm.
Texas isn't just sniffing just to float a name.
We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Live.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
A lot of teams are going to be able to kind of, in non-revenue generating leagues at the level like the Big Ten and SEC are from the TV money and from a place like us that sells out every week, a lot of those teams are going to be able to use donors, use NIL to get to, that $14, $15 million mark. But as that money jumps up every year, and the TV money jumps up in certain leagues and not in other ones, it's going to be really hard to compete at those levels. And make no mistake, the people that are crucifying you or crucifying me are doing so in love and passion
They
of their
care.
team.
They're very passionate.
But about their team,
Right.
and about their league. When I was at Temple, I would have stood on the table. Hey, the American Athletic Conference champion should get into the college football playoff. Now that I'm facing Ohio State, now that I'm facing Michigan State week after week, it doesn't mean that those other teams can't make great runs. It just means that their team's not as beat up and did not have to run the gauntlet to get to the playoff. They're not playing the same teams that we played. So people beat up Indiana week in and week out. Indiana played really tough physical teams, and they say, well, they don't have but I know that the Big Ten teams are better than the teams that guys from other leagues faced. And so, to me, it's the physicality that you have to go through throughout the year that before you get into playoff. It's different than basketball, and so that's to me why the leagues matter. This is going to just go like this, in my opinion. And I think there's some teams from some other leagues that really want to be a part of it, and maybe they'll find a way in. That's why when I came to Nebraska, it was because I saw this coming and was convinced that Nebraska in the Big Ten, in the middle of the country, with our financial situation, would be able to survive in this new world. And I looked at other jobs and said, they might look like a good job, but it won't be by 20 whatever.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. In this deep conversation about Coach Rule in Nebraska and how they're going about things. DB, you asked Shane to play that clip there. What was on your mind?
I think it's the consistency of the message.
Okay.
Right. It's the consistency of the message. It's what he says. It's what he doesn't say. Every time he talks about direction, it's clear that he wants people to value this institution as much as he does.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's players. It doesn't matter if it's his coaching staff. It doesn't matter if it's the rest of the Big Ten or if it's the country.
Mm-hmm.
He wants people to see Nebraska the same way he does. And this is independent of the job that he's doing. He's starting with a premise. Hey, this is a great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you can accomplish things here. Hey, get rid of the whole victimhood BS. Right? This school is capable of accomplishing some things.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the consistency of the message. And then the other thing that he said without saying, it's still about, there's this component of him, and I don't know if he's going to be too cute for his own good or not, but there's this part of him that's always trying to navigate the system ahead of change.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about working smarter. What did he say at the podium during Big Ten Media Days? Hey, you got to travel across multiple time zones and rosters are going to look like this. I still think it's going to be about the staffs that work harder and work smarter. What did he say about, to get into the tournament?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You want to be cohesive and have good leadership and be galvanized. All the things that he talks about Nebraska either is or has, or it's not far-fetched to think that they're capable of doing.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And
right? Like,
it's honestly, it's one of the things I like most about Coach Rule. And
like if you can't get on board with that, and who knows if it'll work. But if you don't think like that and you aren't consistent, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, then you don't even have a shot. And this is one of the things that I love about Coach Rule is that he does seem to appreciate what Nebraska is and what Nebraska offers.
And he can't be the only. It would be nice if other people like hopped on the potential board.
That's why I got, and I know this is going back now, that's why I got so mad at Trev. That's why I got so mad at Trev, because he acted like he got it, and then he left for what seemed like no damn reason at all. Now I get he had his reasons and like power struggles and whatever. But when you talk that way about a place, it's like people that talk that way about their spouse. They're like, oh, they say all these wonderful things, and then there's like a little road bump and they peace out, right? Like Trev talked about Nebraska like he was the loving husband, loving partner, loving spouse, and then they got in an argument, and he's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Right? Coach Rule is the guy like, hey, yeah, maybe we need to go to some marital counseling or whatever, but we're sticking this out.
Yeah.
We're going to make this thing work. And so that's one of the things I love about Coach Rule. He seems to appreciate this place as much as we do. And that's all I ever really want about people that represent our state and our universities.
You can hear it the way he talks. Now, we'll see what value that is that brings in wins. But it all just backs up to he's not going to leave any stone unturned on how to get better.
Can I make the argument that it matters a lot? That feeling that way about the place you're at matters a lot when it comes to wins?
Yeah.
Because there's been some guys here that didn't seem to love everything Nebraska was, right? Like I'm not just talking about a guy. Like there's been multiple guys here that didn't seem to love everything that Nebraska was and everything that came with being the head coach at Nebraska. You think that doesn't come off to players?
Yeah.
You think that doesn't come off to your staff?
No, yeah.
You think it certainly came off to fans?
I have plenty tangible examples, right?
You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's harder to recruit in-state when your in-state kids don't even think you want to be here.
Yeah.
Maybe it's harder to retain good coaches or hire good coaches.
Or even on accident when you're talking and you address the podium, there's these subliminals about how hard it is here.
Yeah. I don't know how subliminal that was.
Well, some were better at it than others.
Sure.
Some
were pretty direct.
Some were better at the victimhood than others.
Some were pretty direct about it. But if you're talking to a head coach or an assistant coach that is telling you how hard it is here, and not hard because we're making it hard because that's how you accomplish great things, is by going through the hard stuff, but it's hard just to exist here. Yeah. If you hear that all the time, I wouldn't want to come here. I wouldn't want to. If I was a player, I'd be like, oh, I guess I'll just go to Iowa, or I'll just go to Wisconsin, or I'll just go to Stanford.
I just remember him telling Christian in Coach Samanji's office, and there were 7 guys in there. He's like, look, I get the trepidation of, are we going to win?
Mm-hmm.
But you know what makes winning a lot easier? Good players. I'm not going to say anything other than that. Like, you do what you have to do. But, like, that's my pitch.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn. It was awkward.
Yeah.
SCJ, it was awkward.
Sure.
Just 45 seconds of silence. It was miserable. I was like, oh, shoot, he ain't coming here. I'll tell you that.
A couple months later, signing on the dotted
It
line.
was a lot longer than that. I mean, I had to look at some Oklahoma gloves on his hands at practice a couple of days, but he's consistent in the message.
You think Brent Venables loves being in Oklahoma right now?
No.
It's a little dicey out there,
yeah.
But that's
I'm telling you, the next. You asked if the players could see it. I guarantee you, this time spent right now when they're not always with the players, this is about staff development.
Mm-hmm.
I just know it's like this is about staff development. You know, Braden's there now. Addison is there full time. DeKeel is there. Like, this is about staff development. And for, the Holgersons and the Phil Snows and the Butlers, it will be important for them. And Dana and Phil probably have it already in their DNA
mm-hmm.
to not be enamored by where you are.
Sure.
But it will be like, that's number one, to get that out of them.
Sure.
Get it out of your system. This ain't Disney World. Because I'm telling you, it gets everybody.
It's kind of a fine line, though, right?
Because it gets everybody.
He was talking about some of the He was talking about some of the transfers coming in with in that interview, right? And he goes, "Oh, you get 21 meals a week?"
Yeah.
Like, there is some of it that is practical and does make you better.
Yeah, but guess what though? Everybody gets tired of eating there.
No, I get that. But he was kind of talking about it in terms of, like, how do you be,
No, I understand. I get it.
How do you live in gratitude without being enamored?
Yeah.
Right? You have to live in gratitude without being enamored by all the bells and the whistles.
Do you know
right?
how?
How?
Stay in the moment.
Yeah.
That's real gratitude, right? It's when self-awareness meets where am I?
Yeah. Well, it's the self-awareness that's key.
It's
right.
It's when it's that, like, that's gratitude.
And how did he describe it a couple weeks ago when he was talking? He's like, I don't want you to come and thank me. I want you to come and work your ass off. That's how you show you're grateful.
Yeah. He's the worst.
And going all
He can't even take a compliment. It's the absolute worst. Everybody knows those people, right? They just deflect. And
Yeah.
they'll move on.
Oh,
to the
wasn't
next,
that big? Yeah,
you know,
whatever.
or
Oh, I had a
it's
lot
not
of
even
help,
that.
or- yeah.
He'll move. He won't even. It just move on.
He won't even acknowledge it.
Let's just move on. So when you have people like that, it's just basically they're just on to the next conquer.
Mhm.
Right?
You just keep going.
He's just not he's not he's just not happy with kind of the performances in crunch time, man, or time out here. And he was better in year 2
Mhm.
than in year 1 with clock management.
Sure.
Better in year 2 than year 1. But he'll tell you, listen, we got work to do situationally.
Mhm.
Like, we need to practice those situations.
I also think having an OC that's been a long time head coach helps a lot.
That's going to be part of it, because
helps a lot.
there won't be as much dialoguing situationally.
Mhm.
They will a little, is it more quickly or quicker, more quickly be on the same page.
Mm.
So there won't be and hopefully, like real finite, you're better situationally with some of your groups,
Mhm.
and that will breed a level of comfort where you don't have to overthink it.
Yeah.
Can I make a 43-yard field goal? Can I make a 47-yard field goal?
Can we execute in a 2-minute?
Can I punt from my own 8?
That would be helpful.
Like, when you can do that and not have to overthink it,
Your in-game management
because
is a lot
he
better.
told on himself with the special teams. We just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
We were like, oh man, how can you just dumb this down to long snapping? But he said in context, listen, when you can't get those basic mechanics right,
Everything else gets more
everything else
complicated.
you just overthink everything else.
Mm.
Right? So he wasn't letting his guys off the hook. He's just telling you, like, when you can't stop a little leak, you worry about everything else that's going on.
You think the whole house might flood. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla, more Hurrdat Sports Live. Coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
We're back here, Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. No matter what you're looking for in a financial institution, Centris Federal Credit Union has you covered. Whether it's checking and savings, auto loans, mortgages, refinancing, whatever it is, get to centrisfcu.org, talk to one of their experts, and they can help guide you through your financial needs. They're federally insured by NCUA. That's centrisfcu.org. A couple interesting thoughts here on the YouTube page. Our guy Rashawn says, EJ Barthol is a great teacher and knows talent, and I pray he gets his flowers. I hope so too.
He's in the thick
Rashawn.
of it.
I would say he would know more than just about anyone.
I don't get it. It's kind of aggravating. I listen to local media. It's almost like, I don't know. I don't know if it comes from the fans first, but whatever. But we're just really dismissive of the job that he's done.
So I
don't know if we want it to be more electric, but he can only start with what he has.
Sure. And I think a lot of it is, and this is
I was mad at you. I'm like,
what are you mad at? Well, I said the running backs were just fine.
We argued about that for 2 months
Yeah.
in the preseason, and I'm like,
and I was right.
No, you weren't. Not even remotely.
Listen, the group.
Actually, I think I have a clip from it.
Well, first of all, you're correct.
Thank you.
That's never. I definitely wasn't talking to you. Must have had a guest host that day.
Wow.
First of all, you're correct. I might have been talking to myself again when I was doing that. No, it's. I think there's. I think two things can be true at the same time. I cannot be in love with the group of backs that they have had the last couple years.
You people want like Quinshon Judkins or.
I mean, it would be nice, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be pretty cool.
12 of those teams out there.
And I would like to be one of them. Is that all right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, I cannot be in love with the room and also say I think he's done a good job with them. Right? Like, I think
everybody's significantly better than when he got him.
That's how I feel. I feel the same way about Donovan Raiola. Now, he gets more flowers now.
It's still like pulling teeth.
But now he gets more than Barthel does, but especially early, I would go kind of spot by spot. I'd be like, okay, is this guy better than you thought he was? Like Bryce Benhart, we wanted to drive to the airport.
Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And this is not on the heels of a Texas report from NACOS, but who's gotten worse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hot Danger makes a good point. He says the fans want him to pick one running back and ride him for 1,500 yards. That's not how it works anymore, but that's what they seem to want.
Yeah. And I think that's what
I think that's pretty close.
I think he's spot on.
Yeah, I think that's close.
Because that's what made me, you're like, well, yeah, maybe as a group and it wasn't just you, it was everybody. And I'm like, you guys, are they productive when called upon? Right? Now, that's not to say, it's not to say that we didn't watch Dowdell get in the open field and want him to make a guy miss.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I also understand what a guy was where I saw him a year ago versus where he's gotten. Some guys just aren't who we want them to be.
I think that's
but it doesn't mean that they aren't
they haven't gotten better.
They're not being developed.
So I think that's the big thing, is they're just not who we want them to be. And so we blame that on the running backs coach, or we blame it on whatever, right? But I think here's the overarching issue, and I put myself in this.
Just get off it. He's a better. And again, if you don't like the way that he coaches, or he's not who we want him to be, let's say you're 100% spot on. Just name me another position group where you think the guys have gotten better.
I mean, I would say offensive line. I think they've consistently gotten better.
Okay,
under Raiola.
We give Coach Raiola a couple Gerber daisies. We don't really give him a bouquet.
No,
we're not ready.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah. But it's taken a while. It's been pulling teeth a little bit.
Give me another position.
I would have said Knighton before he left. I thought the defensive line got better.
Okay, but
he's gone now.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Did you feel that way about the disappearances of like Cam Linhart or?
No, it was mostly about the improvement of Ty and Nash.
Okay.
From what they were before this coaching staff.
I'm just telling you, there's only one guy out that all of his guys are better.
Sure. No, I'll buy that.
There's only one.
I
don't even know. I don't even know if you could. I don't even know if you could debate that.
I would maybe. Who's gotten worse on the offensive line? I would maybe push on Raiola a little bit.
No, but he's seen in a different light, though.
He is. But I'm just talking. If we're talking about what the answer to the question is,
I'll take Dvorak. I'll take Butler. Just give me anyone.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. I think that he is certainly not viewed the way he probably should be.
It's a safe to say it's a you guys problem.
But here's I think the big issue with, and I include myself in this, with fans that are trying to evaluate coaches, especially at position groups where we don't necessarily understand what's happening if the raw numbers don't show up, right? Is we don't always know what goes into making a coach good or bad in that situation, right? Like if I don't have a running back or a wide receiver is a good example of this too. If I've got a wide receivers coach that maybe I don't have a great passing offense, I can't tell you if that guy's good or not. I really can't, because in the sense of if I don't have a good passing offense, so nobody's putting up good numbers, I can be like, oh, I kind of like this guy or his talent, or he brought in some nice players, but I can't tell you if they're executing the way he's teaching it.
Do you feel like you have a good baseline?
I think to a certain degree, but I think it's hard when you're not in practice, so you don't know how it's being taught, and then the results don't show up.
You want to go rapid fire?
Sure.
Ready?
Yeah.
I'll give you a guy you say better or worse.
Okay.
Ready?
On players?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be players.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you you're better at this than you think. Ready?
Okay.
Banks.
Banks got better.
Nair.
Worse.
Lloyd.
Better. Which season?
So
you're talking about the whole picture?
I'm talking about the duration of his career.
I would say he got worse.
Bonner.
Inconclusive. We never see him.
Okay.
So that's part of it. He has performed worse than I think he is as a player.
Okay. So you did that super rapid fire.
Yeah.
Those were all receivers.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you put your wide receiver coach and the group of guys that have gotten better?
I would say not good enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're better at it than you think.
Sure, but I mean, like, if you want to get like real in the weeds on, okay, is he running this route correctly?
I don't know if we need to get into the weeds. That's 20 minutes versus 17 thing.
That's fine. But I'm saying, like, if I'm trying to evaluate a coach,
you need to move on from that guy.
Yes.
Okay.
But I can't tell you necessarily what the specific things happen.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know. But like in basketball, I can do that. In basketball, I can tell you like, oh, he's not doing this, this, and this. They're player development guys, not getting them where they need to go. Like I can give you specifics in different sports because I've been there, right?
Yeah, but generally speaking, you could do it in every sport.
In general, yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's harder than
I don't need to have coached basketball to say that Trey Alexander was a better player post leaving Creighton than when he got there.
Sure.
I don't even need to tell you if it was using his right hand or his left hand or moving right to left or coming off of pin downs or if how he can maneuver with a flex screen or a high ball. I don't have to tell you any of that.
You can also
I could just say
probably tell me that every big that's come through Creighton in the last 8 years has gotten better.
my point in that is you don't have to get into the specifics.
Sure.
You don't.
And that's fine. I do think if you can see the specifics, I think it's easier to evaluate a coach because otherwise you're kind of just going off of gut. And I think that's sort of the problem with EJ Barthel is people's gut tells them that the running backs aren't where they want them to be.
Well, I don't think we're talking about the same thing when we talk about his coaching prowess. Because, maybe it's landing some big fish recruit. Maybe I don't know what it is, but it can't be whether guys get better under his watch or not.
I think one of the major –
I'm 100% sure of that.
I think one of the major things that we evaluate position coaches –
We had guys saying he was going to be fired in the offseason. Oh, I know for sure, but I'm like, what are we watching? Did you not see Dowdell last spring to this year?
Yeah, to the end of the season.
Dude's better.
Mhm.
Still not what you want.
Right.
He's better.
So I think I think with position coaches –
EJ looked pretty good.
Yeah, Emmett Johnson looked really good.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we do with position coaches, because we don't necessarily have great prowess on it, is you go almost exclusively by how they recruit, right? That's a lot of what was done with Mickey Joseph, right? Is we look at him and go, hey, one of the best wide receiver coaches in the country when he came to Nebraska. And then the accolades were, look at all these guys he recruited. Look at all these guys that made the NFL. I don't know that we always have a great sense if we can't point to a laundry list of 4 and 5 stars. And that doesn't mean the guy's not a good coach, or it doesn't mean that Jamarian Parker's not a really good player, or it doesn't mean that getting Dowdell wasn't a huge coup out of the portal because everybody wanted that guy coming out of Oregon, right? But if we can't point to a list of guys and say, oh, look who he's brought in, I think we struggle with evaluating position coaches properly.
Okay, so how much do you think that coincides with when we're watching something, needing the opportunities for a real evaluation?
I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, so when I would tell you, the weird thing about EJ is like he's kind of the one coach that every time I talk to him, it's always he wants more for his position group.
Sure.
Right? He'd say, let us get
more
rid of him
opportunities
or feed us or something like it was always something, right? I was like, man, that dude just kind of stays edgy. Like maybe that's just his personality.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, that guy could definitely coach me, right? Because he wants us to always be ready.
kind of advocating for you.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And I told you this this was privately just between me and you because we were talking about coaches' different personality.
Yeah.
He's the same coach that was coaching those guys from Sat to Holgerson. Same guy.
Yep. They look different. The group looked different.
How?
Dramatically.
But why?
Because they did different opportunities.
Okay. So that matters too.
It does.
With evaluations.
Can I bring up one more thing that I think people had an issue with?
Don't you think that's
No,
important?
it 100% matters.
Okay.
Well, I mean, again, not to bring everything back to Donnie Raiola, but how did the line look with Whipple versus how it looked the next year when people were more on the same page? Like it was dramatically different, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the same guys, and it looked dramatically different. I think the other thing people will knock Barthel on, and I don't know if I genuinely don't know if this was his decision or not. I don't think they loved the running back rotation. I think they didn't love the way guys were getting carries.
I don't know what you want me to say to that.
I'm trying to give you.
That's not a good enough reason to have that be an indictment of a guy.
That's fine. I'm trying to tell you, you asked why people didn't love him. I'm giving you the reasons that I've heard.
How many bell cow backfields are there in the country?
Not a lot. I mean, even Judkins splitting carries with Henderson, right? I mean,
it's hard.
And those guys don't really exist. Not really. There's like a handful like in the country anymore. But even in the NFL, you don't really see it.
It was hard.
You've got Derrick Henry and Saquon, and that's
you got by.
about it.
You got by in a year without really having a position group. And you could maybe say the same thing about quarterbacks. Did you like Dylan at the beginning or the end? It's not as linear.
It's not, because it was kind of a up and down.
And competition was different.
Competition was different, and
so was his health.
And play calling was different.
Okay, now, just like mechanics and things like that, that's a guy that you look at and you're like, oh, there's plenty of room for growth and development. Nobody wants to say that out loud, but you you are free. You are now free to think that way because your coach said the exact same thing a month ago at his press conference. The next step into making this his offense is this, and this, right? So when you can hold your best players accountable, potentially your best players accountable, the offense can only get better.
Sure.
Like it has no choice if you start there.
Yeah.
But you can't be afraid to do it, right?
Yeah.
He blew out one of his coach, a wide receiver coach that he clearly didn't feel like was getting the job done. We can argue whether it was too late, too soon, too whatever. Fact of the matter is,
he moved on.
He
had an offensive coordinator that he's ridden with for a long time.
He moved on.
He had a special teams coach that he's ridden with for a long time. He moved on.
So at the end of the day, I think just from sheer process of elimination, they've got to get better.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
They've got to get better.
I don't disagree. I'm just you asked for what people's issues were with EJ Barthel, not Emma Johnson, and whether they're valid or not, I think that's what they were.
So let me ask you another thing.
Yeah.
Do you want Nebraska to be in a position where other staffs around the country come get them?
That other staffs want their coaches? Yeah. It's better than the alternative.
Better get used to it.
It's better than the alternative. It's kind of like this off-season champion thing that people always talk about. And they're like, oh, well, here we go again, Nebraska off-season champions.
You got to stop talking to those people. They make you dumber.
It's better than the alternative.
No, I know.
Like what? You want them to lose the offseason?
Listen.
You want them to not have good moves in the offseason?
The empty can rattles the loudest. You just got to move on from those people.
But that's what I mean with you want other staffs
you know where
to desire your coaches.
But you know where you got to be careful?
Where?
As you told me that Nebraska better win 9. Right? So
I said if we're gonna take things away from the fans, the only thing left to give them is wins.
You just got to be a better team.
Yes. Saying a specific number wasn't what I meant.
You got to be better this year than you were last year.
Yes. If you're going to take some things away, you got to give something back. The only thing to give back is wins. That's it, right? I mean, D. Lloyd said it, winning cures everything, right? Like that's not novel, but if you're going to take things away, I shouldn't have said 9 specifically. I wasn't trying to give a specific number.
Because I really don't think when people say, how can I got to be careful. I really don't think people, when they say, oh, great, off-season championship, or because that's what other fan bases will use against Nebraska to neuter them. So I think the victim kind of philosophy of Nebraska's fan base to protect their feelings is they'll say the same thing.
Yeah.
But
I'll make fun of myself before you can make fun of me.
But I certainly don't think they want them to.
You don't want the opposite. You don't
lose
want the
offseason.
Yeah. No, you want to have a good offseason.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's a.
You want to have a good offseason.
I think we do that to protect our feelings.
It's
I don't think they really want the opposite.
No, yeah, it's you're making fun of yourself so that your bully can't make fun of you first. Right? That's all it is. But they also want the off-season championships to result in more wins.
Right.
Hot Danger brings up a good point. He says, "Hey,
would you stop saying that about him?
I mean,
you got 2 favorites in here right now. It's hot. It's the.
Where's DJ?
Yeah, it's the Jenner and Danger show.
But he says one thing they can give back is improve the stadium, which I think they've got about an $800 million plan to do that. So
I thought he had a better point.
What's that?
They can give us beer.
I think there's a plan on tap for that as well.
They're
moving in that direction.
So you only had 1 no vote, right?
Yeah.
That experience will be interesting.
Yeah, it will.
Because I do think, and I know you hate Trev for a multitude of reasons. I do think the fan experience
was something he was very concerned about.
And it was his best way to say thank you for putting up with nonsense.
Sure. Yeah. And I think he was right about that.
Like,
listen, just because he's the worst doesn't mean he never got a couple things right. Like,
how do you keep your act so sharp?
Like, Danny Hurley is the gum on the devil's shoe, but he still wins a few games. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our guy, John Fanta, one of the best personalities in college basketball.
Wow.
We will get
Old Ravi Paul Bunyan.
we will get to John and some college hoops coming up next year on Hurrdat Sports Live.
We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Oh, that's how you break a press if Neil can get to it. He did. Yes. Wow. Down there, Coach Patino's talking to his staff like, how'd that happen? Ashworth hits it home. And now a nice entry to Green. Jason Green with authority. It's Jemiah Neal. Neal! Skies to the rim. Creighton has some life.
Welcome back here to Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are going to be joined shortly by our friend John Fanta. He covers college basketball for Fox Sports. You pretty much see him everywhere if you're watching any college basketball.
Some good jobs with his podcast too.
With the Field of 68, and he's might be one of the hardest working men in show business. So we always appreciate when we get the chance to talk to Fanta. One of the things I kind of want to ask him about, and I'm not sure if we'll get to this or not, so I'll ask you in the meantime, is I'm a big NBA draft nerd, NFL draft. I like drafts, right? I like drafts, I like combines, I like all that. I like player evals. So I'm looking through kind of NBA draft stuff over the last couple of weeks, and you notice a lot of guys early on in the NBA draft that are on teams that aren't that good. Outside of Duke, who has 3 guys in the top 7 in Flag, Knippel, and I never say his name right. I think
Kniffel,
whatever. Yeah. And then the big guy who I told you I like. I can't remember how to pronounce his name off the top of my head either, if I'm being honest. But I always want to call him Maybach, and that's not right. That's a car.
Rick Ross. Robbie here for Rick Ross.
I think I got a guy on that would probably know how to do it.
You think he's here with us now?
Yeah. Wait. Do you think John is driving Maybachs? I don't know. He makes a ton of money. Let's bring in one of the best personalities going in college basketball, Mr. Fanta. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. It's good to be with you. It is hard to believe that 3 weeks from tomorrow is when championship week really gets revved up for you guys with the Huskers and the Blue Jays. They'll likely have a bye in the Big East tournament, but it is that time of year now. The madness is in the air.
It's interesting because it seems like the last couple of weeks, like the broadcasts everywhere now doing play-by-play. So I get a little bit more of like your thoughts real time in game. How much does John Fanta struggle or embrace the way games are officiated that kind of dictate how you do your job?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I think the first thing that I would say is we get the opportunity to talk to the officials before every game we do. Now, I say you need to take the opportunity. Not everybody takes the opportunity. I'll just be honest with you. In our field, that is very real. I always think like it's something you have to do. So I will always talk to the refs before the game. And I think what people need to realize is, and if you criticize an official, you're a fan, you're welcome to. We've all been there. We've all gotten upset at a call. Mm-hmm. They are humans, and they know when they're wrong after the fact. Mm-hmm. And they beat themselves up like no other. These guys are, I've had refs in an airport the morning after a game, after blowing a call, and they are just distraught. They want to end their time doing it because that's how hard they take it. So, look, there have been some calls this year that have certainly, like any year, but even more so. I just think in our era of social media that everything gets seen and heard, so things get amplified, and missed calls happen in these games. And I think the tough part is like when people say to me, "Well, what kind of penalties do they face?" Well, people get penalized at their jobs. We don't want to hear what the AD coach conversations are with their respective leagues when certain games or calls happen, because they surely cannot be pretty. And I've been made aware of some of them over the years, including this year. And I can tell you right now, we're not talking minutes. that are spent on this. We are talking hours, if not days, spent on sometimes a 3-second call. How do I, as a play-by-play guy, weigh that? Look, if there's a missed call, you can't ignore it. I always say, like, you owe it to the viewer to be honest with them. We have to tell facts. It's actually a really good point that I'm on with you guys, because a couple of days ago, and sorry for going long on the first answer.
No, you're way good.
Ryan Kalkbrenner gets hurt. And I don't know what you guys were feeling. You could tell me if otherwise, but I'm watching this happen in real time, and I'm thinking, are we watching the end of his career right now?
Yep. Thought he broke his foot.
I did too. So Ravi and Damon, my thought was, okay, as a broadcaster, because our world is what have you done for me lately, we need to start talking about the career that this kid has had. To put this in perspective, like, if this kid's season or career is over, this is a very tragic way for it to end. We didn't say it could be career ending, but if you watch the broadcast, you heard us say, look, you're talking about one of the all-time Creighton greats. You're talking about somebody who is one of the best players in America. Here are his all-time statistics. He just passed Ralph Sampson in scoring today. He just passed Baylor Shireman. First 3 tweets. John, is he dying? Hey, John.
Although I will give the Johnnies credit, even when you host your pods and stuff, those guys get after it, man. The St. John fandom, because sometimes I'll chime in or I'll pop in and I'll see what's going on, and those guys they're pretty passionate.
Hey, John, do you think he's better than Willis Reed? Hey, do you think he's like a significant? Folks, it's television.
Yeah.
We were saying Willis coached at Creighton, and honestly, when that kid got to the scores table, if you're a Creighton follower, weren't you like, holy crap?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I couldn't either.
I was
shocked. I was shocked. We had that package ready to talk about Willis and the Garden and Creighton. We didn't have it ready to talk about that. We were like, this is the perfect time for this package. Of course, people are like, what an irresponsible journalistic thing to compare the 1970 NBA Finals to a Big East regular season game. We were just having some fun. He shocked us all when he re-entered the game. Here's my point. My point is, you got to tell it like it is. You're never going to get it always right. I can't be on the air and start blasting the officials to a level that's insane. But
and you had a good feel early that it was going to be a physical game. They were letting them play off the ball. I mean, it's the Big East, right? You've seen it 1,000 times.
It is the Big East, but on a replay, if there was one, Ashworth had a collision, they didn't call it, and we're like, yeah, that I don't know if the officials told the players that was all right, but like, that's a foul. But here's the thing, guys. I got to tell you, the last thing I'm going to say. If we say something, the refs got our numbers.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that can of worms. I don't need that in my life.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm kind of glad you brought up officiating, because I do think it's, I'll complain about calls, but I think for me, the bigger thing that I focus on is sort of stylistically how they choose to call a game, right? So we talk about Big East officiating and how, DB and I talk all the time. A Big East game is going to be officiated differently than an ACC game. It's going to be officiated differently than a Big Ten game, right? Like, how do you ever get a sense when you're talking to these officials and having these meetings with the refs of, like, hey, they might call it a little tighter today. They're kind of more aware of, because just as a Creighton fan, right? I watched that St. John's game, and I know early it's like, if they're going to call the game like this, St. John's going to win. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to allow St. John's to beat people up on the perimeter, they're going to win most of those games, right? Do you ever get a sense in those meetings of if they're going to try and keep a lid on that a little bit better? Because I know teams like St. John's make it really hard because of how physical they can be. You could call everything every 3 seconds.
Right. I think that's a problem, right? Because you don't want to be calling whistles the entire game. But with the way that they can wear you down defensively, sometimes that crosses the line where maybe you have to say, hey, that's – but you do get a feel. You get a feel for the type of game it's going to be when you're talking to the officials. And I think for them, heading into Sunday's game at least, they didn't want to be the reason why the game got decided. But sometimes, as you said, when you're not calling fouls or you're calling certain things and not other things, you still can be a reason why the game is decided. So look, I actually just calling the game. This is unbiased outside Omaha, outside New York party here. I thought the game was pretty fine. The reason why I say that is I haven't seen St. John's get called for those fouls all year.
Right.
They're the aggressor. They just swarm you, and they're relentless. I mean, it's really amazing what Rick Pitino has done with this team to see them shoot the ball the way they do from the free throw line on Sunday. That was, I mean, they're shooting 50% from the line in a de facto regular season title game. I know things can change, but like that's what it was at this point. And they didn't do a lot of those little things, but they just defend. They get up in you, and it's hard to officiate that. And I am very curious to see how officials in the first and second round of the NCAA tournament officiate them. Because people have to remember this. When the officials are out there for the first and second round, like the teams, they're also trying to advance. If they officiate a bad game, they're out. It's like American Idol. And you want to be one of the last three standing in the championship game. And if you sing a bad song, have a bad game, you're done. You are done in the tournament.
That'd be interesting to watch St. John play Tennessee or something. Let me ask you.
Oh man, I mean that is a bar fight if I've ever seen one.
Let me ask you something, John, because I don't think it's certainly not, and maybe it's because of Kalkbrenner's prowess on the defensive end, but I don't think Ashworth takes away votes from Kalk. How does St. John keep Player of the Year discussions not being about the tandem of their backcourt? Or is there somebody else? I don't know if Nova wins enough games, or is there somebody else that belongs in the Player of the Year discussion other than Ryan or maybe Richmond?
Well, I think Ryan belongs in it because I think Ryan is so invaluable on both ends of the floor. The things that he just takes away from your offense are limitless. It's if he's not blocking the shot, he's making you think about blocking. He's going to block the shot. So he's got to be in the mix. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Again?
I think so. I'd be stunned if he didn't. And if it's a share with Stevie Mitchell, like let's just call it what it is. The Big East could rename their Defensive Player of the Year the Ryan Kalkbrenner Defensive Player of the Year award. And if they hadn't done it with Ewing, but they should have. But the fact is, like he's in the mix because of Creighton's success and all that he does in a game. If you're St. John's, like I agree with you, Damon, it is a bit of a problem with the fact that, you know, they've got multiple guys, and then how do the votes get distributed? I would say RJ Lewis is the best player for St. John's on the entire season. Richmond didn't really come on until the past month. So now everyone's watched the last couple weeks. They're like, yeah, Big East Player of the Year, Big East Player of the Year. I saw this. I've seen this before, both with Richmond. Now, years ago with Isaiah Whitehead, he came on like in the last month and change. And everyone's like, yeah, you should get Player of the Year. It's like, well, no, Player of the Year is judged on the whole season. So I would give, and Cam Jones has to be in the mix.
Sure. Although I can't figure him out now. And maybe it coincides with Marquette's up and down.
The roller coaster. Let's see how they finish.
Yeah, that's the thing for KJ.
They're in action tonight. They're hosting Seton Hall. Seton Hall's riding a high, but frankly, it's had a really, really rough year. And so if you're Cam Jones, you've had a week. If his legs are still not under him tonight, I don't know if they're ever going to come back because he's been struggling a little bit. But you got to remember, right now, if you asked a national media person, Cam Jones, they'd say, yeah, probably second-team All-American now. It would just be hard to believe that a second-team All-American couldn't also win Big East Player of the Year. I think it's going to get split. I think it could get split 2 or 3 ways. Back in 2021 or 2020, I think. Yeah, we had a 3-way tie. It's just how it went. It was really weird. It was Mahmoud Kelashvili and Robinson Earl and I want to say Gillespie. It was a really weird year. It was weird because Villanova had 2 Big East Players of the Year. Like that's just strange, man.
So, John, speaking of Villanova and a couple other teams here, I guess I don't want to ask this in a negative way, but I kind of have to. Who have you been most disappointed by over the course of the season? Obviously, Villanova's got the incredible individual effort by Eric Dixon, but that hasn't really translated to wins the way they've wanted them to. I think some people expected more out of Xavier. And then you've got Georgetown, who started off the non-conference really well and has really struggled in Big East play. Is there a team that you were kind of expecting more out of from that group, or maybe maybe somebody from the field that you're like, I kind of thought there was more there and we just haven't seen it?
Well, biggest national disappointments, Kansas State as well. I mean, Kansas State spent millions on their roster and they're 500.
Yeah.
Kansas, they're 5-5 in their last 10. How? Well, AJ Story hasn't panned out, and they haven't been a consistent three-point shot-making team. So in that regard, they've been disappointing. North Carolina's been very disappointing.
Very much so.
I mean, now they have to look hard in the mirror. Missing the tournament 2 out of 3 years. When's the last time that was acceptable in Chapel Hill? I think you have to make a move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just my take. Indiana has been mostly disappointing, and that job search is fascinating, to say the least. I think in the Big East,
sounds interesting because of Matt. You get an Ivy League transfer who's capable of being all world. Like he is. I don't know why he just takes some time off, but then you have another one and done potentially. But it would be fast forwarding for Georgetown in the totality of Cooley's coaching job there. He just hasn't had a ton of time.
No,
would you make the case for Georgetown?
Well, I don't think that they've been a big disappointment. I thought that, here's the thing. Over the last 3 years, they had combined for 4 conference wins.
Yeah.
And so now they've got 6. So in this season alone. So look, yeah. I want to see how they finish. They have Providence at home tomorrow. And if Sorber's healthy, it's a game you really need to win. Because then you go to Creighton and UConn. You're probably not winning there. You host Marquette, you host Villanova, you're at DePaul. You need 2 or 3. And if they go 9-11 in his second year after you combined for 4 conference wins in the previous 3 years, and you turn that into 9 in one season, now you head into next year and you say 2 things. Okay, 2 things got to happen here. Numero uno, you got to start scheduling, man. Hey, enough is enough. And this is my thing with teams all across the nation, but the Big East in particular. Schedule people. It does you no good to play the Little Sisters of the Poor. It does you no good. Well, why are you doing that to yourself? Well, it helps us grow. It helps us identify roles. BS. That's ridiculous. Michigan played 2 quad 4 games. They actually lost a couple of games early in the last possession. Were they in the top 16 reveal set by the NCAA Selection Committee Center? You bet they were. Arizona started the year 4-5. People said, I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Were they in the top 16 reveal of the country on Saturday? You bet your butt they were. Play people. Play people. It helps your sport. It helps your program. It helps your brand. It could help your NIL. It helps your television partners. You think your TV partners want to televise you taking on an NEC school, a back-end MEAC school, a random MAC school? I'm sorry, but they don't want to do that. Should you still play 4 or 5 games against those schools? Fine. Some schools are playing 6, 7, or 8. I am not okay with that. And as a coach of your program, why would you be? There's no harm by taking a loss to a quality team in November. None at all. Nothing. There's a ton of harm if you get picked off and you pay the team to play you.
Let me ask you about coaching prowess, because I think it's at a high level. It is tough to win on the road in the Big East, and there are some coaches that are held in high regard. For you, do you need to see how the end of the season plays out before you're Coach of the Year candidate?
Well, in the Big East, I think it's Rick Pitino because his team's at the top. And if they finish in the top, it's hard for me to go against him because I thought they'd be like third or fourth in the league, and they've been first for the season. And I think Greg McDermott's done a remarkable job and deserves votes and could end up sharing it with Rick. But I kind of lean towards Rick. I do. By the way, I didn't really answer your question on Big East disappointment. Villanova. I mean, they just haven't been good enough under Kyle Neptune. Last week you beat St. John's, then you get blown out by Providence. Come on, man. Like that can't happen. That was just a weak performance. They shot the ball poorly. They only managed 62 points against the Providence team that only has 9 scholarship players currently. So, Coach of the Year, I like to see things finish out, but I think Pitino's in the driver's seat here. You know, one thing that you have to sometimes do is this, right? I think there's a sector of people out there who are like, well, I don't like Rick Pitino. Okay, well, that's all right. I mean, you don't have to like, people. That's why he's compelling. But if we just remove the name, and you're like, this coach has done this with his team. I think they were picked 4th in the Big East.
I think that's right.
I'd have to go back and look. And they're 23-4. Yeah, that's probably the coach of the year in the league.
Oh, and there are a ton of national guys, but man, you're giving that description versus expectation. How do you not head down to Louisville to talk to it be in the conversation of national coach of the year?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a good point. By the way, St. John's was picked 5th. They weren't even picked 4th. They were picked 5th in the league. Yeah, Louisville, he's done a terrific job. I'm not surprised because of the ACC having a wide open doorway.
Oh,
but
they're bad. It's a bad conference.
For an 18-team league, that league has found a way to be at its worst. I mean, my goodness, that conference is not compelling at all. And I just watched Virginia.
So that may hurt him. Oh, how about that? And listen, I've said this. Duke is fantastic defensively, but that was embarrassing.
It's not even a fair fight, and they are. I mean, David, here's the scary thing. Duke's offense is higher rated than their defense.
Because they're efficient. Yeah, they're efficient.
Like that is an amazing stat because I think they're an elite defensive team. They just limit you. They say, you know what you're best at? We're going to take that away. We're going to take away those 2 or 3 things that you do. Oh, we'll take away the perimeter. And if they make any perimeter shots, forget it. Like last night, they started 6 of 11 from 3. The amazing thing is, this proved to me that Clemson, like I'm going to take Clemson to win a tournament game or 2. Duke shot 12 of 24 at Clemson. If I had said that to you before the game, you would have been like, yeah, how much did Duke win by? Yeah. Would have been like, no, they lost. Which is amazing because Clemson's the one team in the league that can give them problems physically. Clemson plays physical basketball. They grind you down on the interior, and they defend at their level too. So look, I agree with you. Pat Kelsey deserves a look. National Coach of the Year to me is sealed up, though. I mean, I know, like Dennis Gates has done a great job at Missouri. I'm very impressed with what he's been able to do. I think Ben McCollum down over at Drake deserves a real look. He's had a terrific.
I know the Big East got to be looking at Drake.
I'll say, you mean future Big East coach Ben McCollum?
Yeah, he could be. I mean, he certainly could be. Dusty May's been very good at Michigan. Tom Izzo's had a sensational year. But I think Bruce Pearl's going to get National Coach of the Year. Like, how could you not give it to him? His team wasn't in the preseason top 10, and they've firmly been the best team in America.
Hey, real quick, we're up against it with 30 seconds. Who do you like better, Florida or Bama?
Florida. Florida, because I see a better team defensively. But I think Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin, when fully healthy, they just got hand-logged back. Alabama alarmed me on Saturday because I never thought they found any sort of a groove to contain Auburn. They let Auburn run their stuff and run it with ease. And Alabama can score. But guys, at some point in the shot-making world, when shots aren't falling, can you get back and get some stops? Did it ever feel like Auburn was uncomfortable in that game?
No. They got downhill pretty much.
Next time we get you back, John, you got to figure out, help me, why I don't trust Sears. For as savvy and as long as he's played, he would drive me crazy.
Yeah, sometimes the best players are the ones who drive you craziest, and he kind of fits that mold. But at the end of the day, that could hold you back from winning a championship. Can they get to the Final Four? Sure. But right now, I think Florida, because Florida went into Auburn and won. I got to go results-based. Florida went there and won. Only Florida and Duke have been able to say that.
That's our guy, John Fanta. He covers everything college basketball, calls games on Fox Sports. John, we appreciate you as always. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks, John.
Always great to talk with you guys, too. Thanks for having me.
That's John Fanta of Fox Sports. We will be back to wrap up the show. We'll get a late edition of Bet On It going here on Hurrdat Sports Live.
We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Live.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Live. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska. Place your sports bets. Make sure you get to warhorsecasino.com to check out all their promotions and a full list of details and house rules. DB.
Yes.
We liking anything tonight?
I love the fact that we have this flexibility and freedom.
I know. I thought we were going to take a real break there, but that's okay. We're right back at it.
Well, old habits die hard.
Yeah,
Ravi.
don't have a heart out at 10, so we can get Bet On It to you here still.
Well, you don't have a heart out for breaks.
No, but more than 30 seconds would have been nice.
I love how Shade and Sasha are like, hey guys, you can make up your own clock. You don't have to get out of a conversation. I was like, oh shoot.
And then
that's great.
And then Shane's just like, nope, get out now. And Sasha's like, hey, don't stop the conversation. And Shane's like, get out now. How many times you put the clock up on us for Fanta? About 18 times.
I wouldn't take that if I were you, Shade.
And then he's like, hey, you're going to have to come back quick here. And I was like, Shane, we can do whatever we want.
I know. That's why we came back quick.
All right, this would be the best 2 minutes in sports, Shane. It's a lot like your love life.
Hey, now.
I thought that was a Kentucky Derby.
Came and went.
He's jockey-sized.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true.
What do we like here tonight? We got better games than we did last night.
We do. So a lot of better games.
It's a thin slate last night.
And it's not great.
No.
Like I said, it wasn't sick 'em, it was suck 'em. I mean, you're letting Caleb Love just hit running floaters and
posters.
Dude, just baby sky hooks like he's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, Love. But that's neither here nor there. I think we're going to go to East Lansing.
East Lansing, Purdue and Michigan State.
Yep.
Sparty is a 3.5-point fave.
I really, really like Purdue.
You like Purdue on the road
I
here
do.
at the Breslin Center.
Little spot for them to get right on the roadie.
You're going against it here.
Yeah, I like Purdue.
You like them with the points?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they won. So I'll always take the points because that's gift.
Ken Palm does say that line is a little fat.
Yeah,
he's only got it a 2-point game. You're getting a full 3.5 from Vegas.
Yeah, man, boiler the heck up.
You know how I love my Kenneth Pomeroy.
I know you do.
Any other ones you like tonight?
Yeah, I'm a big Loyola Chicago guy. Just knowing that roster and that team. They're on the road at Matt. Don't call me Davidson.
Okay.
I actually would take. It's not really a Flyer conference game, but I like Davison at home. But I would probably look at maybe the money line, depending on if you're getting 1.5 or 1.
Okay, there we go.
That's about it.
You don't have anything on our
slim chickens.
You don't have anything on our guy John Tanji in Wisconsin bringing Illinois into town?
I know one thing.
What's that?
I think Wisconsin is one of those teams that's better than we think they are.
That's possible
because you can't put your finger on the why.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, like we're so stuck in this fuddy-duddy walking up the court offense. That's not how they play.
No, but I don't really look at them and think, oh, they should be really good either.
Yeah, because it seems like they make a lot of tough shots.
Yes, which I don't typically love.
I don't know. I think they're better.
I like the ability to make tough shots. I don't want to live there.
Yeah, you got 9 teams in the Big Ten and the top 28 of net rankings.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It's pretty good.
It's not. It's not.
It's the anti-ACC.
It's not 5 of the top 7 in as the SEC's got. But
do you love? When did Carolina play Florida? Was that in December?
Ooh, way back. It was North Carolina, December 17th.
Listen.
Yeah.
Way ahead of the free world on Florida.
You were. You've been talking about Florida for a good and long time.
So that's a really good basketball team. I'm glad Fanta likes them.
Yeah, I have to.
Because you did have the funniest text ever.
Yeah, Florida.
Because I could hear how you would say it. I could hear how you were saying it.
What did I say? You might be right. Florida might be better than Bama.
No, you said I think.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with me. You're like, I think Florida's better than Alabama. And I was like, I think they are too. Yeah. Sears would drive me up the wall.
He would, but he's also.
And we saw the head-to-head when we went with Janai Broom
versus
Sears. Like, we saw that head-to-head. And then he got on that little heater.
Well, so that's the thing.
And then he got him back even.
That's the thing about a guy like Sears, right? Is I've seen those types of dudes, and because don't let me sit here and tell you like I was in love with Shabazz Napier, right? But I've seen those types of dudes
just carry
a team for 6 games, even though we saw it. You want to go Big East back in the day? You had like your Scotty Reynolds that were not super efficient guys.
You always use him. He's better than you're giving him. Stop using Scotty Reynolds.
You want me to look up the stats on Scotty Reynolds?
Scotty Reynolds was a good player, man.
He was not an efficient player.
No, I know.
That's my point, right?
That dude would get you a bucket in crunch time.
He would, but he's kind of one of those dudes that would drive you a little crazy.
Did you see Thornton's short arm that gimme against Michigan?
Well,
Will fell down.
Do you want to know what Scotty Reynolds' career field goal percentage was?
Oh gosh, I have a guess.
Go ahead.
He's probably 41%.
41.4.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that could drive you crazy, right? Yeah. Anybody that's shooting 41.4 and putting up double-digit shots a game is probably gonna drive me a little crazy.
I understand.
But that's a dude that could go get you a bucket. I feel like Sears is very similar. Like he's in that mold of guy.
At least Reynolds was a 2-directional guy. It seems like
for sure
Sears is going to get to that level.
Listen, he's a flawed player, but I've seen those type of guys carry teams through tournaments.
And meanwhile, you watch Janai Broom hit 2 threes to start the game.
Yeah.
He's good.
He is really good. We don't typically see guys that are built like him and that play like him carry teams through tournaments.
And he's old too, so I guess he's damaged goods.
I want to talk about old guys in college basketball. We didn't get to it today. We will tomorrow.
It's an old man league now.
I think college basketball teams might be putting their rosters together wrong.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. We'll get to that tomorrow. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Hurrdat Sports Live.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.